Good afternoon, everyone. We're in the committee of the whole meeting of Tuesday, November 28th. All from Squamish, Squamish, Awaymo. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There is an agenda in front of the committee. I'm looking for a motion to adopt, and I would like to add at the end of the meeting a brief discussion about transit, continuation of the discussion from the Public Services Committee this morning. Move with the amendment by Councillor Schell, second by Councillor Pryor. All those in favour? Opposed, if any, motion carries. First up, we have our affordable housing program development. Gary, is that you?
Yes.
I know this is a council priority, and we're always really excited and keen to see this moving forward, so welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As noted, Gary Buxton, General Manager here at the District. Going to give Council a programme and project update on our affordable housing work that we've been on. So I'm going to take credit for work that our consultants have been doing, Macola Development Services, who are watching on the screen. So essentially we have two documents that we would like to get Council's review and acceptance of. The first being one that you've already seen, the operational policy and operational options analysis mouthful, which you've seen back in September, and this is just a confirmation of the material contained in that. The second one is the feasibility study for the Carson Park project, the affordable housing, rental housing project that we are rapidly moving forward and have a pending grant application with BC Housing, hence the sort of hurry up offence and getting this in front of Council as soon as possible. And finally, an update on the Valley Cliff site where the news is less rosy at this point in time.
Question, Gary, and maybe Linda. So is Macola actually watching online?
Yes.
If we have a question for them, can they call in? Would they be able to call in to answer it? Is that something we can facilitate?
Yeah, they've got my cell phone number, so.
Or
text. They can text.
Yeah, I know.
See if they're really
just in
watching.
case. I mean, you might be able to answer them, but I just thought we'll see if they're paying attention.
Devin, Kelly, are you
But
paying
it
attention?
may be there's a question that they would be best answering, and then if we could facilitate that, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll text her.
She's on my contact list, yeah. So I'm not giving you my password.
That's what you really want.
Yeah.
Don't
trust Gary.
Don't dig through the
trust.
photos either. Okay, so where were we then? So the policy and operations, options analysis, the feasibility study, and then a final wrap on the Valley Cliff site that we previously considered. In terms of the policy and operational analysis document, which you've seen before, it contains a high-level needs analysis for affordable housing, conducted with the information that we have available, which in many cases is not robust, and that's something that we do need to work on. An overview of current policy and local housing resources that we already have in the community. And it did look at an overview of models from other communities, from Richmond through Whistler, Banff, and actually into a community in Alberta, Medicine Hat. It has 4 policy recommendations around creating clear policies and guidelines for everyone, expanding the availability of sites, and I know that's been the subject of discussions in the long-term real estate facilities strategy, creating funding goals and maintaining a long-term vision, the latter two of which further work, policy work that Macola is doing, is moving those two along. It has one operational recommendation, which was that we pursue an arm's length housing, affordable housing entity. We don't have a definitive answer as to what exactly that entity would be, but we certainly want to coordinate our activities with the existing non-profit agencies, and they've presented to Council in the recent past the Squamish Integrated Housing Solutions Group, so the House and Women's Centre, the Seniors Housing Association, I should remember these, Helping Hands, and Sea to Sky Community Services. And I think Laura's here, so, yes, and I believe the others are watching on TV. One of the other recommendations is funding a position of creating the requisite resources so we can continue the programme, and that's actually part of the budget request that's already in the 2018 budget, which we'll be getting to in 2 weeks. So that's really, I say, really that report is one that you've seen before. There have been some very minor editorial changes, nothing changed in substance. So that's recovering the ground that we'd previously covered in September. There should be nothing new there for council. In terms of the feasibility study...
Yeah, hold on, Jerry.
Oh, sorry.
But just related to that budget ask, is that position at the district? The wording of the report made it sound like it's within this new arm's length entity. So are we going to put someone into that to get that going?
The budget ask is really, let's say, vague at this point in time.
I think it can be what council
Yes.
determines it to be, and
I mean, I think that's a great idea, but I'm just curious.
it very likely could be an internal position until such time we actually have the arm's length and it transfers to that. But that's up for discussion for council.
We've simply asked for the same resources that we've had this year, which should be enough to get us to the next level of either having a staff position or an entity in place.
Are we doing, because you're moving on to the feasibility study and I'm still in this, so are we going to do the whole thing and then go back?
I can
We can,
skip back.
sure, let's have a conversation about, if this is going to be discussed in the budget, I don't necessarily want to get too ahead of that conversation.
I have another question.
Okay, go ahead.
Under the recommendation to generate additional capital for affordable housing, it says create funding goals for the Affordable Housing Fund achieved through cash in lieu inclusionary zoning contributions. Now I thought, so I'm just maybe a bit confused, but I thought our cash in lieu, our inclusionary zoning was to get developers to build them.
Yes.
But then this is talking about taking cash in lieu.
The way that CAC policy is moving is that there's an emphasis on getting units that the developer contributes. There is a cash in lieu provision, so it will be both. Again, we haven't settled on a definitive funding formula. Cash in lieu would be partly one. It does raise some other options for increasing capital to the affordable housing program as well.
Questions, Susan?
Yeah, it's along the same lines. I'm just wondering how we could, the only way I would be interested in cash in lieu is if it paid for an entire unit to be built. So not the pittance that we've been getting for community amenity contributions, but actual something meaningful that would create actual funding for the unit, otherwise just taking in the unit.
Agreed. So again, when that really gets resolved when we bring back the CAC policy.
And I also appreciate recommendations that people will do.
Jason?
Two things. I think that I don't think we need to get too hung up about this arm's length versus internal, especially at the start, because there may be some value to having an internal person, because while they might be responsible for moving this project forward, they may be able to provide some additional support within the district. And I'm thinking particularly taking a look whenever there's a rezoning or something and providing comments and feedback to say, this project meets our requirement, or it would be better if we had, more units of this type and so on and so forth, and comment on the inclusionary zoning as it stands and say, is that sufficient, or all of that. So I don't think we need to worry about that, just to know that there is going to be somebody devoted to this file more than anything. And I'll just leave it.
And we'll make those, there's sort of recommendations through this report, but we'll make those determinations in consultation with obviously the greater community, the housing options group as well, moving into that. So I don't think this is the end of this conversation by any means. Okay, let's move on.
So the feasibility study, notes are going to walk about. So the feasibility study covers this side at sort of Carson Place, Buckley Avenue. What it's proposing at present is there are 80 units on site, 72 in an apartment building. That's the sort of orange block that's at the sort of mid-south part of the project, and then there are 8 townhouse units in the sort of the northern part, parking in the centre. This space being left at the front of the site for the Dentville Community Park potential. The existing skate park remains where it currently is. It would be expensive to relocate that. The project also includes that green area is a fairly sizable portion of the footprint of the building. When we got into the design, we realised that the FCL weren't going to allow us to put apartments at grade anyway, so the thinking here is that this offers potential for community space, whether or not it allows for youth programming and replace the youth centre that's just across the parcel. This may be a little large for their needs, so it may have some potential for office space for non-profits and other community groups, but right now it's left as sort of a ground floor community space that could house whatever programs we want to. The remaining floors 2 through 5 are the apartments that comprise the 72 units in the building. I say the designs so far are very preliminary. I don't want to say that this is definitive, this is what's going to get built, but this is the basis of the application that we make to BC Housing. It quite likely will change somewhat from this by the time we get to construction, but that's the plan going forward.
Can I ask a question about the square footage? There's quite a bit of a jump between the 2 and 3 bedrooms. That's a really big bedroom. It also seems like quite a large unit, and is it possible to get, 1,500 square foot 3 bedrooms instead of 8 of them at almost 2,200 square foot?
The design's not infinitely flexible because of the space constraints on site. So I don't want to say either no or yes. It's certainly possible that we can adjust some of the unit sizes. I say this isn't fixed.
It's just a huge jump. Like a 2 bedroom is 823 square feet, and a 3 bedroom is almost 2,200 square feet. Like it's almost 3 times as big for 1 more bedroom. So and a 1,500 square foot for 3 bedrooms, bigger than mine is. So I just love, if we can get more units, let's get more units.
Okay, and then Makola may actually have a better answer for that, so they may text something in the next few minutes. So, but it's certainly this design is not fixed at this point. Nope. Okay.
But I think the mix, and looking for council feedback on this, but I think the mix from, and Laura, anyone else who wants to contribute, please let me know. The mix from studio and bedroom, to 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms seems pretty good. I like that mix. It just seemed to me there's an opportunity for more family-oriented units. Maybe a little bit smaller, but there's a large green space nearby. I mean, it's got some other amenities that I think make it very livable for families, even in a smaller footprint than 2166. I'm looking for feedback on it. I'm not married to it's bigger. I think it's bigger than most of our houses, right? So it seems like quite big. Jason.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. That was the one thing in the whole project that sort of stood out for me was these townhouse 3 bedrooms, and I was just wondering if there was another way to get more units, recognizing that we want 3 bedroom units for sure, but can we do that in a different sort of form that gives us more than 8 units? I agree.
And now we face that typical dilemma that most developers do. We're now trying to balance development area with parking. So we're on the other side of the equation this time. So.
Although when you're adding a 3, well, I guess it could be adult teenagers driving, but you're not, I don't think you're increasing the amount of cars between a two-bedroom and a three-bedroom. We're not, our requirement isn't different.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought the question was to actually add more units.
More three-bedroom units, but smaller. Yeah, that's exactly my suggestion.
I will follow that
There
up
would be
with,
more parking because there's more units.
Oh, I think just in front of the unit. Yeah, okay, good. We can make it. Linda.
Mayor Heinzman, that is the point that Nicola made was BC Housing does have guidelines in size of units. The original understanding was that Squamish wanted larger size units because of the family. That said, it's not fixed design, but it does mean more parking and there are some limitations. But again, this is a design meant for feasibility versus concrete.
So maybe just a suggestion is that we see if we can facilitate more, slightly smaller three-bedroom units. If we can't, but Doug.
Well, I don't want to get too far into it, but sometimes the garage, because now the parking's going to be in the first floor of those things for the FCL, the garage is counted as part of square footage, and so the living area may not be that much larger for three-bedroom versus two-bedroom. Sometimes there's different ways of computing the square footage. So,
That probably
because
explains it.
the first floor of those townhouse units would have to be above the FCL.
we will certainly follow up with that when and if we get to the next iteration of design. Say that it would be very difficult to go back to the architect at this point and adjust the work that we're at without sort of pushing this back into January or February. So, but I hear you loud and clear.
Well, then,
I mean, this is not.
council has to be able to have an input on these things. So
Absolutely.
hopefully it's not too far.
No, I reassure you, this is not what's going to get built there. It'll be something similar to this, but it's not what's going to get built because we're far from being able to tell you if we can build this yet. The capital budget for the entire project runs out to be, 23 plus million. Hard costs, 16 million. Which results in a mortgage that needs to be serviced of about 14 million with a $7.6 million contribution from BC Housing, which is where we're heading so far. So it's a sizable project that we're proposing to put together.
Is it on this budget item? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering about the budget item that has the long-term, having long-term staffing. I understood the projects needed long-term staffing.
No, this project is
is
fully independent living. We did explore some options for perhaps say youth housing, but then you've got to have someone on site 24/7. It suddenly becomes a much more difficult project to put together. So we're trying to keep this short, sweet and simple, which means it's independent living like you or I have right now.
It's
So
purpose-built rental.
there are no program supports planned on site, with the exception of perhaps the youth centre that relocates into the building.
And the other thing is the new federal housing. Has anybody looked at the new granting opportunities with federal government now?
I suspect this report was issued before that announcement, so we'll backcast on this.
And it doesn't
Maybe more
preclude,
available.
if there is a core needs program that can bring that operational funding and doesn't require on-site 24/7 supervision, there's no reason that can't go into the building. We've discussed, if it's youth that are 19 and up that don't need that, and the program support is there, the funding, the subsidy support is there, there's no reason that we couldn't have that role fulfilled in the project. So.
Yeah, can we just ensure that the space requirements are adequate if we ever needed to change the model, that there's space to have, like office space to run the building if it's needed?
Well, you see, that's where it gets very difficult. If you've got to now change from an office to a residence, then you're either losing or gaining units. So we sort of need to make a decision: is this a purpose-built rental, or is it going to be a supportive housing building? Because there are real design considerations. So
Right.
I think we determined that this was purpose-built rental.
that's the
And
direction.
we have
we're
other
going.
goals in different facilities to create more subsidized social housing, but this, I believe that was council's direction. Jason, Karen?
Yes, and, you know, I definitely, we always welcome, you know, more investment by province and feds to do coordinate housing, but, you know, I think for this one project, given the backlog we have in terms of purpose-built rentals, we should just focus on that so that we can maximize the opportunity and have a short timeline. I mean, you know, we have been talking about this for 3 years now, so it would be nice if we get to a construction phase. And I noticed the timeline, if it goes smoothly, could look at construction in the latter part of next year. So I think that's, I see where staff is going and the consultants are going with this to try and avoid any unnecessary complication.
Yeah. We need to bring this to market quickly. It needs to be straightforward.
Well, that is not my recollection, that it was going to be preserved for just affordable housing. And, you know, I do remember the Squamish Integrated Housing Solutions Group coming in and saying that their need is over 200 units before 2021. And so if we're not finding space, even for women fleeing violence and having subsidized units, this is an ideal location possibly because it's walkable, it's near the school, it's near daycare. I mean, you know, so what I'm wondering, I guess, is has Macola, like, as part of their feasibility, had a really in-depth conversation with the Squamish Integrated Housing Solution Groups? Because that was their ask, is to just be involved in the conversation, to evaluate the opportunities. I mean, this is our land. We know from the report we don't have a lot of land. So if we're not building at least some subsidized units, and they showed us the rents, like, way less than that. Then when's our next opportunity? And we want it integrated throughout the community. We don't want to create, you know, ghettos. We want people to be integrated in all types of housing. So I guess my question is, have they really talked to this group about the possibilities here and who is it for? Maybe youth, maybe women?
Yeah, I believe they have. And Laura, would you?
Yeah, Laura, you have to come up. You have to come up. Join us. Thanks.
Yes, I mean, I believe we have. I mean, I don't want to speak for Megan and the House and Women's Society, but they have their own plans. And again, if that society wanted to invest in this building, it's entirely possible that they could do that. It's just there are certain types, forms of housing, certain tenants that come with program requirements that require design changes.
I get that. There's lots that don't.
And those could be accommodated in the building if the women's system...
And even if it moves forward as is, it still can be accommodated.
Yes.
If the funding comes
It's
through.
where you need particular design changes and particular designs that it gets very difficult to do both.
Yeah. Oh, just quickly let Laura speak and then go to Linda.
I was just wondering, Gary, we're supposed to be having some kind of a sit-down workshop. What was that?
I believe it's December 14th.
Because I was under the assumption that we would do that piece before this happened. But, so we still have an opportunity to talk about this further.
Yes, I say there's a grant application requirement that I believe is December 4th.
Okay.
And we're really talking about, is there something feasible on this site? And that's what this study aimed to answer. And it says yes. Doesn't mean that this isn't the project we're going to build. This is something that allows us to get to the next level, make the grant application, to actually do a design. So there are still those opportunities to include other forms of housing, provided again that can work with the financial model for the project.
Linda, did you want to just add?
Oh, I just wanted to add quickly that in this even initial design for the purposes of going for this grant, the proposal is 5% of the units are accessible. So again, an agency, if they wanted to access those units, for that reason.
There's a little margin built in there, but for people who may need it.
When I mean accessible, I mean...
Fully accessible? Do you want to add something and then I'll go to Susan?
Yeah, just quickly, Alex Anderson, Sky Community Services, and I work with the Youth Centre and I oversee the Youth Centre program. So just in terms of comments around design changes for potential units that could be supportive housing units, that if the thought is that there is an opportunity to possibly be looking at a youth resource space, the model that might take shape of could also include office space that supports units. So there is the opportunity for that to be cohesive is kind of what I'm saying. And it wouldn't if those things are being looked at in tandem, then there could be an opportunity to combine those things.
Yeah, I had the same thought, that's great.
It's my deepest concern is losing the accessible, not just accessible, but affordable and core needs housing. This is our last piece of land that is substantial enough to have a project on it. And unless we're purchasing land, which we don't currently have the capital to do, even if it takes a bit longer, I know it's like we need it on the ground right now, but we also have a bunch of developers that are building rental housing. So it's not just about getting a project up as quickly as we can, it's about addressing the needs, the long-term needs of the community's housing. And those core needs are the biggest wait list in town. And we do need youth supportive housing. We do need, this is our last piece of land. So I am distinctly aware of the fact that we want to push something forward to get a grant, but now there's more granting opportunities with the federal government. Everybody's made it a priority. There may be more funding available, and I want to make it the best project possible, not the fastest project possible. And I want to make sure that the longest wait list in our community, which is accessible housing and low-income housing, is addressed. And if this is the only project that we get to do this on, then I want to, if it's just going forward to get this one grant, that's great. But if it doesn't address community needs, then it doesn't meet, then I don't think it's really meeting the needs of the community. So I just want to make sure that all the housing needs, including having supportive housing, is addressed in this application. And I do think that there's other granting needs that are available now with the federal government coming forward with their statements about helping municipalities with their affordability needs. So I just don't want it to be another rental housing project, which we
don't have rental housing projects.
We have a proposal
outline
on second and
that was the whole outlook of what the Affordable Housing Task Force came up with. That was the #1 priority. That's what we're responding to. There's a huge need for social housing. Rental housing doesn't have wait lists. Social housing does have wait lists, so I'm not sure it's a fair comparable. And we know that we have social housing needs, absolutely, 100%. And this project doesn't preclude that stuff. That's not what anybody's saying. But fundamentally, we have a real shortage. We have no rental housing. We have 3 buildings in town. Linda?
Project right here.
It's not purpose-built rental. Which one are you talking about?
Victoria and Second Avenue. It's purpose-built rental, all of it.
All along the blind channels.
All on the broad
No,
channel.
it's not
purpose-built
purpose-built rental. It is not purpose-built rental. I don't know what you're getting at. It's not purpose-built rental. It's privately held strata.
Yeah, I can confirm that. None of the buildings that are going up on the blind channel are purpose-built. They might be rental or used for rental for a period of time, but they're not purpose-built. There's no housing agreement in place to secure them long-term.
No security whatsoever.
So the project on Second in Victoria?
Not purpose-built rental, no.
Not purpose-built,
None,
it's just rental.
zero. We have
It may be
zero
rental,
purpose-built
we don't know that.
I thought they came forward with a proposal for just rental.
No, nobody has. That's the problem. That's the issue we're trying to address. Linda, among others.
Briefly, Mayor, thank you for the segue around the Housing Task Force report and the recommendations. So for councils, or just a public reminder on the spectrum of housing, what staff believe our direction was to focus on the area that the district can have the most impact on, because there are agencies working on those core housing needs, and that this is purpose-built affordable housing. And then the affordable part is that definition around median income and where does this fall. So that's where this feasibility came in with the design that it is, in terms of going to BC Housing to see, as the funder and financer, would they finance something that looks like this even though it's not exact. So that's where this feasibility came from. Council's direction is different than it is. And again, the concern around talking to the different groups and the different various needs and the detail of that is happening. We're meeting on the 14th. The challenge is that the deadline of this grant is a hurry up offense to see if we can get the grant for further more detailed feasibility.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's great. I think staff's doing a perfect job on it, and we are, I remember talking about targeting this year, and so, you know, the one question I have, if you don't mind flipping back to the plan areas, does the housing group have a parking ratio that they need? I mean, we give parking breaks to people all the time, and I see where it's got the park along Buckley Avenue there, and I think there's potential for expansion there. And if we cut back on the parking a little bit, you could get a 4 or 6-story building in there. And I just don't want to lose the opportunities down the road to expand this. You know, because we're building Helping Hands with 0 parking stalls, 46 units. And I'm just wondering, I mean, do these guys require, you know, 1 or 2 parking stalls per unit? Is that what the...
They haven't, I don't believe the design as you see it currently meets the RM zoning.
Yeah, I couldn't find it in the report.
RM4, it doesn't meet the RM4 zoning requirement, so it'll need a parking variance.
Yeah. Because
If you try and squash more units on site, you just worsen that. This is
well, I'm not
this
talking
is
about
maxed
now.
out.
I'm talking about 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, and this thing's starting to get paid off, and, you know, look at the seniors housing, we're looking at expanding that.
Once the automotive industry gets,
And just looking at that piece of land there, thinking, okay,
I mean, there are always options
Yeah.
to relocate the skate park, build on the park, although it's
Okay.
notoriously difficult to remove parks once they're in place.
that's my point.
But we've already made a commitment on the Dentville Park.
Yeah, but it
That's-
doesn't have to go there. I mean, I can bring up meetings where we discussed that location, and it wasn't necessarily the,
yes, you have brought up,
yes.
there's been no motions forward, and council's direction has always been to continue on that location. That's the current direction, unless there's a
I
motion
never had that
otherwise.
discussion.
We've had many.
That's the direction we've been working on, and that's what the community engagement, this is the site that the community engagement led us to as well.
I just don't understand it.
Jason.
It's a busy street.
Yeah, and maybe we'll get to this in the second part of the presentation, because I know we're going to be talking about the other sites and stuff, but I just wanted to highlight that. I do think, like, even though that it was this site and then one other one that we said, okay, well, these are apparently the 2 easiest sites, like, go with that, but there are actually other sites throughout the district that, you know, with a little bit more time to plan and everything, we could do different projects, and, you know, maybe there may be less constraints in terms of space and whatnot, so. But I agree with Ted, like, you know, maybe 50 years from now or 25 years from now, we could cover that. That's the one good thing about surface parking is it's a little bit easier to deal with if you want to redevelop as opposed to a building of some sort, so, you know, I think that's a neat idea.
I want to get through this.
Sorry, and further to that, expansion also onto the site where the youth center sits now, because that building cannot exist for a whole lot longer.
And it's majority on Crown land, so
Yeah.
it needs some acquisition.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, we don't own that, so it's a little tricky then, but hasn't stopped us before, doesn't have to stop us now.
Possession's 9/10, right?
Exactly, yeah. That's what Brennan Park's all about. Parts of it, part of it. Where did we get to? Capital budget, 14 million served by mortgage, which the project should support through rental flows, with a BC Housing grant of 7.6 million, plus or minus. The resulting rental rates, yes, are they truly affordable? No, $990 for a studio, up to $2250 for a 3-bedroom, but those are all below market rates. So, does it make them truly affordable? No. Does it make them a lot more affordable than what's currently available? Yes, but that's where the project was intended to take. In terms of the draft operational budget, this is sort of the annual and monthly cash flow in and out of the project, based on that mortgage of 14 million. All things being equal on a feasibility study level, this thing can net out cash at the end of the year, at the end of the month. Well, that's very sort of high level, but the thinking here is that it can pay for itself, and it doesn't require ongoing or daily, weekly or monthly, to make the budget work, keep the building open and keep the lights on.
So in order to bring those rental rates down a little bit, so if we wanted to bring them to the 80% level of
Yes.
whatever determines market rental, or income for this area, we would just need to see more line items with money in them around the equity contributions, grantors.
Yes. We need to reduce that number for mortgage. So,
I think there's also going to be some more things that we can access with the new initiatives that the Fed's put up with the national benefit for housing that could bring things down, kind of like how I'm relying on SAFER to bring my rental rates down for seniors. So there may be some way of bringing some of these down for people, just not directly through a district.
yeah, this doesn't consider any income support
At this
programs.
point.
It's just a cash in, cash out calculations.
Yeah.
But that's
And fundamentally, you still need the same cash in and cash out, you just get cash in from a different source.
a different pocket, yeah.
Jason?
And that's basically what I was gonna say, is governments are tending to move towards, individual grants, and so, low-income families with children, and elderly renters, and then who knows with this federal one, will probably be sort of an income tested thing, can go ways to helping people, get greater affordability of the cost of district.
The exact same way Centerpoint just did their project. A lot of people, when they saw the rental rates, they kind of got sticker shock. But then when you recognize, you have to income test, and then that does bring down the rent for you by maybe 150 or 200, so it makes more sense. Everyone's going with portable rent subsidies now, as opposed to the in-house subsidy programs like what I'm running now at the Manor.
So rental rates, budget. You can look the other way, Ms. Matthews. No commitments here.
I get a bad rap. I get a really bad rap.
They are shown as proposed contributions in the document, but we are not committed through the submission of the grant application to these, but it's essentially the value of the land, which we're estimating at $1 million, 200,000 in cash.
How big is the land again? How many acres is it?
I'll say 4 acres plus
See, that's-
lines.
Pretty cheap. Evaluation of what the land is worth.
Keeps the taxes down.
There is a covenant on that land that basically says it's only for municipal purposes. And so the province has agreed that affordable housing is for municipal purpose, but it would affect the market value of the land.
Yeah, I just wanted to iterate the land, I think, from a theoretical point of view is
BC assessment has, as I found out, has a real Byzantine way of assessing land that affordable housing projects sit on. So that's a conversation for another day. We are assuming that rezoning, development permit, building permit fees and development cost charges would be waived. Our current DCC bylaw does allow council to do that. So again, that would be a decision for council to make at the time of a development permit application, a rezoning, building permit, or any of the others. So.
Question?
So in the capital budget, it talks about our capital contribution being 350,000, but this says 200. See?
There's, is there a difference between
Is there a difference between
in-kind
those two?
slash waiving a fee slash cash?
Again, I'm hopeful that my colleagues at Macola have the answer to that.
Could it just be a typo that it's inconsistent, we didn't catch it?
Could be.
Oh, could be
Anyway,
three.
yes,
No, it just, you don't want to submit it with discrepancies.
Yeah.
Good catch. We'll make sure that those numbers are correct. The proposed timeline is quite aggressive. Getting the grant application in, funding, project development, that's the PDF grant, project development funding, awarded later in December. We'll start the rezoning process early in the new year. And then we hope to sort of get started late next year on construction if all all goes well. That's aggressive, and it's very much dependent on funding and then sourcing the necessary expertise to get the next version of the project concept done and get to construction drawings.
And that includes any rezoning that may or may not have happened?
There is a rezoning needed. It's zoned for public institutional use.
I believe so, yeah, it's one of our P zones.
I was actually sort of wondering about that. Could we not just keep the same zoning? Is housing, like affordable housing, not part of that zoning?
Or could we add the definition to?
Well, it's residential, the use is residential. I think we would have to add that into the park. So in any way, you would have to get rezoned, rather adding it or rezoning it to something else.
Well, because I'm just thinking actually of the senior society, the original buildings, I think those are not zoned. I'm correct?
It's a land use contract on the senior side.
Okay.
So it's also zoned for RM3.
Oh, it is?
It is.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought it was still a lot.
See, the rezoning,
Sorry, I shouldn't interrupt, but the new site I think is, it's the old site because,
On the seniors.
Okay.
sorry to interrupt.
we were sort of,
It does have zoning and a land use contract, the current site.
Both sides do.
Both sides do, yes.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll stop.
back to this.
I was just thinking that if there was any way we could sort of reduce any red tape on the timelines, that, you know, that was a possibility, but if it's not, then.
If we can, we had anticipated that would sort of be the meat and potatoes of the public engagement process.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
So that's the timeline. In terms of the Valley Cliff site, what we found is that purple line, it's a little tough to see in the light, that's outside of the creek, Little Startness Creek, that runs adjacent to the site. That's the 15-metre setback. The setback without a more detailed assessment is 30 metres, so there's almost nothing left of those sites. Without doing a detailed riparian area assessment, which meant we would be sort of wrapping that up now and then starting the work that we've already done on the other site. Now, so we've focused our attention on the Carson Place site. This one is not off the table, but it requires some fairly detailed riparian assessment work before we can get anything out of this that's useful.
Even if it's micro home possibilities where you're just literally putting in water pipes and that's about it.
Well,
People walk to their pad. I'm trying to think outside the box.
You'd be running water and sewer in.
Why could you not make it compostable to its own? Couldn't you write that into a?
That becomes a very different project, and I think as Macaulay noted last time,
I know, I'm just trying to figure it out. Okay.
BC Housing.
I agree that our primary focus, Clerk
Yeah.
seems to be lining up and we should just focus on what's feasible. I agree.
So our next steps, project development funding grant requests to BC Housing and CMHC pending right away. The other one is a housing and needs an assessment study. You might say, oh God, another study. An application to BC Housing for that, because we're operating at high level data. What we need to do is get in and do a very detailed needs and assessment, probably using the waiting lists that all of our non-profits currently have, and any other way of getting to the people that really need the housing and getting some very detailed information about types of units, sizes of units, bedrooms, income and rent levels, and all that information, which we have up here. And if we're going to start building buildings, we need it down here on the ground at a tactical level, and we don't have that information. So I know it's not a study, but it is one that we're going to need to do, and we're going to need to do probably every other year. Or we risk building the wrong thing at the wrong price for the wrong people. And at $23 million, I wouldn't recommend that.
And it's very fluid, things are changing all the time.
And then the last one is continued policy and program development from Macaulay will be coming hopefully in the new year.
So my question is just in terms of looking at the next site. And, you know, I'm getting the sense that the Valley Cliff site, we should just probably just scrap that altogether. I'm wondering if we can pick one of the other sites that we had. Remember we had about 5 or 6? Can you remind me, what was the issue with the site that was on Centennial between the highway and Government Road Manpan Bridge, right on the water? Does anybody recall offhand why we didn't pursue that one at that time? Because I know it's a crown piece of
It is a
land.
crown land.
But I think in a lot of other ways, it checked a lot of boxes as far as, you know, there's a dike there, there's, you know, lots of infrastructure there already, and maybe we need to work with our real estate strategy and with the province to like look at securing that or putting a placeholder there to let them know that we're interested, you know, sometime next year, which I don't know what the procedure is for that.
Yeah.
Mayor Heisman, through you, definitely it's something that staff are looking at in terms of being a site that would make sense. In terms of, you know, getting into the, like, actually sinking our teeth into feasibility of potentially building something, we felt that focusing on one project once we knew made sense, but certainly take the point and continue to pursue options for more land projects. And we're working with real estate on that piece of land right now. It is a bit tricky, but it's definitely on the to-do list, yeah.
I wouldn't mind if just quickly exploring a little bit more on that one, and then I'll go to Ted and Susan. There's a piece of land, I don't think we've made an analysis of this, that's technically part of our roadway, right across from the shady tree, that may be useful for something as well. It's pretty small. I think it's about 30,000 square feet. Could be wrong on that. But maybe that's another possible location. It's really close to the Highlands Mall and all that sort of stuff. Not elementary school.
Which side of the highway?
It's on the west side of the highway, right across from the shady tree, across the road. There's a piece between the
Just north
railway
of the
line,
reserve.
just north of the reserve, that is technically considered roadway, I think. But there's a big sort of weird piece that comes off the roadway that may be useful. Yeah?
I believe that's probably in the limited
Somebody wants to
densification.
buy it.
It might be.
What does that mean?
Flood hazard.
It means a high flood hazard, so densification is limited in our flood hazard management plan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's right there. No, you're right.
Oh, right there.
There.
Oh, there you go.
Look at that. It's actually a fairly big piece. So just thought I'd throw that out there as something that's.
Oh, by the road.
What's that?
Can't see the road.
Well, the road is, it kind of, that, see the roads there? Shady, I think, is 40456. And actually the road goes in front of Shady there, but that's the piece where the cursor is right now. And we have these weird little anomalies in our, out there that may be worth sort of taking a bit of a more microscopic look at. Because this is again another location that's on a transit route, it's close to amenities, it's relatively close to Brennan Park, it's close to jobs.
It continues to the reserve.
It is right beside the reserve. Anyway, put that in the hopper.
What's his name?
Ted and Susan, or Susan and Ted.
We did talk about that piece of property before. Anyway, I think the report's excellent, and I'm really happy that staff's pushing this forward as fast as they can. So, I mean, I'd like to motion.
Okay, well, can we just add one more speaker?
Yeah,
and then
oh, yeah,
we'll go back to Susan.
Thanks, I'm just wondering about employee housing as well, since we have this piece of property to address all our housing needs. I'm just wondering how this can dovetail with employee housing strategy, or if there's some sort of way we can make it for employment.
We have talked about that, so yeah.
I'm going to assume that when we get to renting this building, or whatever entity is managing this building, is that there's a wait list, and that's screened based on
Creative criteria.
something related to occupancy or employment within the district, and that it's not going to be eligible for someone in.
Perfect. I'd like to keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, I think that was part of the conversation we had last time, but make sure, it'd be good to make sure we're mindful of that as we move around some decision making. So, thank you. Great conversation. Thanks for participating. This is really, we can only do this to make sure we're covering all our bases and making sure we understand where we're going. So, there is a motion. Councillor Carter, do you want to make the motion?
Sure.
So I'll just read it out. The District of Squamish accept Macomb Development Services Policy and Operational Options Analysis, and that District Council endorse the Development Services Person Place Affordable Housing Project feasibility study to allow grant application to be made to DC Housing. So are we putting that grant application forward?
Makota, we're doing
On
that
our behalf,
yes.
but it is, so maybe instead of just to allow a grant application, the motion should actually read, and council support, endorse the grant application. Moved by Councilor Carter, second by Councilor Kent. Thanks for the discussion, everyone. I don't see any hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Do you guys want to vote? All right. Motion carries.
Good job.
Well done, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Taking the ball around.
Moving on, we have the employment land strategy update. And So just to be cognizant, we are running 35 minutes behind schedule. So it's a big conversation, but if we can make sure everyone is focused, that would be good. And anyone who wants to join us, please come up, have a seat, and participate. Whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman and Council. Today, Economic Development, I'm Kate Mulligan from Economic Development, and Jonas from Community Planning is here to present on an update on the 2015 Employment Land Strategy, as well as make some forward recommendations for consideration. So just to start, the recommendation is that Council approve the following resolution, that the District of Squamish initiate an update to the 2015 Employment Land Strategy to include employment space considerations and develop an implementation plan conditional on 2018 budget approval. So we just thought we would take you back a little bit to talk about what the objective of the employment land strategy was, an update on the status of some of the recommendations, or of all the recommendations that were made as part of the 2015 employment land strategy, and then also to seek direction on future employment land space strategy implementation approach. So back in January of 2015, the employment land strategy was approved by Council, and it included the analysis of current and planned supply of land relative to projected demand for employment space or employment land. And the goal was really to ensure that there would be sufficient land available to meet the range of potential needs. And that included commercial, industrial. The final report contains several recommendations for immediate, short-term, and long-term action. So we'll start with the immediate recommendations. Jonas and I are going to kind of tag team in terms of providing the updates around those recommendations. So the very first one was rezone Paco Road, so Jonas can talk about the status.
So we did rezone it earlier this year to an I-10 zone, which addressed the interests and concerns of the landowners and people that were renting space in the Paco Road area. Essentially created a new light industrial zone. The update of the Squamish Business Park sub-area plan is shown here as complete. but the status of that is currently it's being rolled into the official community plan. So we've done the draft work on rolling in the sub-area plan, but it hasn't been adopted yet. It will become part of the OCP. And other processes that are in progress is the zoning bylaw, the general amendments, which are ongoing. Particularly the downtown zoning bylaw update project is touching on the employment space that was identified as needed in the land strategy to meet the long-term needs. And I'll turn it over to Kate.
And so another one was the Squamish Nation joint planning. So we were to continue to meet with Squamish Nation to discuss employment lands and joint planning development opportunities, including Site B. So to date, actually, you can also speak to this one. Planning met with Squamish Nation Forestry Arm regarding Site B. And Site B redesignation is considered part of the new OCP. In terms of the NAIOP municipal report card, we were to approach them, which is the Commercial Real Estate Development Association, to be included in future editions of the Commercial Development Report Card. And we have been in negotiation with them over the past few months in terms of the inclusion of Squamish as a community report within that. So we're just trying to finalize whether or not we'll be able to be included for this coming year.
Did you say Site B is being redesignated in the OCP?
Yes.
As what?
As employment industrial. So
What it is now?
intensive industrial. Intensive industrial. I don't believe it currently has a designation in our OCP.
Oh.
And so the draft OCP has it identified as a future log sorting, current and future log sorting site.
But it's zoned for that.
Yes.
We'll just move on to the short-term recommendations. So in terms of short-term recommendations, we were recommended to produce an economic development strategy for the district that was completed and approved in June of this year. And then I'll move it over to you.
Waterfront landing was identified in the employment land strategy as a site where employment space should be secured. And so with the new rezoning of waterfront landing, that's minimum employment space requirements have been increased significantly from, I believe the previous plan had it at around 10,000 square feet to 50,000 square feet of employment space.
Then we were to facilitate industrial traffic route, and the description was complete background study for the proposed industrial traffic connector options to connect Squamish terminals, Squamish Business Park, and Highway 99. And the truck route study was completed earlier this year.
And in progress projects is, of course, the official community plan that touches on a lot of the employment land strategy aspects. So one of the things that the draft is proposing to do is to clarify the industrial employment lands and existing industrial and aggregate extraction areas.
And then review and extend revitalization tax exemption program, the RTE. The program is scheduled to end 2016, should be reviewed and extended if appropriate and feasible, was the description of the recommendation. And the revitalization tax credit is available for the oceanfront and continues to be. It is in place with direction to provide regular updates to council on impact and relevance. As well, the business park and downtown revitalization tax has expired with no commitment to reinstate.
I don't think we have any plans to extend any RTEs.
No, this was to a recommendation, and the outcome was that the oceanfront
Continue,
RT
but not
continues.
extend.
Exactly.
This language.
Exactly.
Yeah, don't say
Yeah.
extend. Okay.
And then in terms of update employment lands inventory, that was to update an inventory based on completed immediate and short-term recommendations. What we've done with the employment lands inventory is we conducted a pilot early this year, specifically designed to address some questions around downtown employment space and zoning. We've engaged IT GIS to update mapping to reflect
any new zoning that was contained from the 2015 employment land study. And the pilot really looked at an approach and methodology to create an ongoing inventory of employment space. The pilot was specifically focused on commercial space, and we're looking to extend that pilot based on the proposed recommendations moving forward for industrial land. And so the outcome of this is that we now have a way to not only look at if we have sufficient land inventory, but also supply of space. And we think that that's really critical moving forward. And this is projected in line with the same population projections used within the OCP. And then long-term recommendations.
So one of the recommendations was to facilitate Chikai fan mitigation, and back in 2016 the district went through the process of assessing the most feasible alternatives for mitigating the Chikai fan debris flow. The two top practical alternatives were the mid-fan berm or a barrier at the apex of the fan. So the barrier option is attached to a development proposal that is in progress currently. But I guess we're just showing that we have gone through the process of looking at the options and finding out what those are, and we're working, either way we know we're gonna have to mitigate the hazard somehow.
And in terms of business retention expansion program, the recommendation was for the business retention expansion program, it should be maintained and updated to incorporate new light and medium industrial zones in the Squamish Business Park. We're continuously working on our retention and expansion program. All types of employment space are being considered as part of that. However, our sector strategy will help inform future needs around business expansion. The actual expansion activities include support the scaling and productivity of existing firms. And some of our other activities include understanding the operating context of local businesses, providing business intelligence, resource tools, and related to funding, site selection, process information, and business climate information to our existing firms. And that's through a variety of channels, including web-based. We are working on a new economic development web portal, which should be launched by January, as well as in-person and third-party suppliers of data and information. So we'll continue to focus on our business retention expansion efforts, and we will also place a focus on providing policy recommendations that are backed by data and evidence. So future considerations. So economic development, with the support of community planning, is proposing council endorsement for the development of an employment lands and space implementation program. And what we really want to create is an ongoing focus on data collection and analysis and informed policy and possible incentives that support the adequate supply of employment lands and space relative to population growth. So really what the implementation plan would focus on is the development or the consideration development of programs, projects, policy, and instruments that support the adequate supply of employment lands and space relative to the population growth. It really provides an opportunity for the district to review and refresh our approach to employment lands and space development. And it allows us to look for innovative solutions around employment space. Our implementation plan would be operational. There'd be clear ownership of deliverables and timelines. Our focus would be on supporting that adequate supply of land space by completing those outstanding recommendations within the 2015 strategy, if applicable. And actionable, developing data-driven approaches to land and space supply and demand projections, so continuing our work around creating this employment lands inventory and the policy and bylaw recommendations. Proposed implications would be a budget of approximately $15,000 contingent on approval. It is included as part of the 2018 budget request. It would be led primarily by economic development and supported by planning and development services. And we would also seek external consulting support, and that would help us fulfill on the plan, the implementation plan. And specifically, we would use the consulting firm for their expertise and perhaps in data and intelligence, and that would be on a case-by-case basis based on what the implementation plan would include. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, what economic development and community planning is proposing. Really, it's to reinvigorate and refresh the 2015 strategy and to bring it up to the current date and then move it forward looking 5, 10, 15, 20 years and beyond.
Excellent. Any questions for staff? Councillor Schwab?
So we don't have the data on the comparison between 2015's employment land strategy and how much land has been used up for economic development?
What we have right now is we do have those for commercial. We don't have the full, we do have the inventory mapped in our GIS system. We do have the ability to calculate what that is. What we haven't done is finish the calculations. So we need to do that. And we not only need to complete the calculations, but what we need to do is keep it evergreen.
Yes.
And automate the process of calculating that.
Thank you for your work on that as well. That's excellent news. As well, I'm wondering about, we had talked about doing different zoning in the business park since it's now changed over. Currently, we're doing pop-up inefficient, completely inefficient cement buildings that are 2 floors, hard to heat, and not employment focused. Is there some way we can change the zoning in order to encourage more like high-density employment lands in there instead of single-floored?
Well, I believe this is going to follow the OCP adoption. We're going to take a look at the zoning bylaw and do an update of the zoning bylaw, and that would be the time to look at implementing the policies that pertain to the business park through the zoning.
Okay, so 2 years. So we're just going to get those. I guess the land's already sold. We're using up that area. The mud. We have the mud zone at the end there, and then I'm trying to think about the rest of the land in there.
Any development that's in process right now is going to build out to their zoning that they have right now.
And they're asking for that zoning.
If I may, one of the goals with completing the work around the employment land strategy is to be able to inform development using data. And so we were trying to help that process during the recent downtown zoning process. And that's exactly what this, if we create this implementation plan, will do.
So was there actually a motion put forward that along the lines of Councillor?
It was in the beginning of this term, like 4 years ago. I asked to look at.
It's only been in for 3 years, so.
Yeah, it was at the end of the last term, the beginning of this term, when the employment land strategy.
Can we track that? I don't remember an actual motion. I remember some sort of conversations that kind of wiggled around the edges, but I don't remember an actual motion. But if we could actually get that, just so we have that clarity. Councillor Kent,
Great.
Councillor Pryor, Councillor Rice.
Great report, Keith.
And Eric.
Jonas, thank you. I'm excited to see the economic development web portal here because that ties in with the digital strategy so tightly. And I mean, those two are so symbiotic with each other. I'm just wondering about the content of that. Would that include the employment land strategy and GIS mapping and all of that to inform, as you say, inform development?
So the new portal will incorporate a number of tools that are meant for startup existing businesses as well as potential investors in our community. The tools will be really a handheld tool which brings people through the process and include many of the items that you just spoke about. The GIS will still continue to exist, and we feel that that's really required because developers and still want to look at the detail. The portal's meant more as a economic development 101 portal. And then we link to more complex data that's available through our open data portal as well as the GIS tool.
Great, I'm looking forward to the update for the digital strategy on December 7th, if anybody wants to come at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Ted, and then Doug, and then Eric, and then Jason and Susan.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that answer there.
Thank you. Doug.
Well, it was just about the business park, and I'll leave it for now.
Eric. Oh, this is.
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman. Speaking on behalf of the Squamish and District Forestry Association, I wanted to offer 2 quick qualifications to a couple of items in the report that relate directly to forestry. First of all, there's a reference to supporting the adequate supply of employment lands and space relative to projected population growth. I think we need to keep in mind that not all of our employment lands needs and demands are related to population growth. Mostly that concerns the light industrial and commercial categories. However, our export industries, our commercial transportation industries, and their land demands won't be related to population growth, just so we're clear on that in our strategy.
Yeah, so do you have a suggestion on how do we connect it to anything, or how would we articulate it differently?
It is actually a nuance that should perhaps be articulated. That there are, and the distinction
Okay, so
is basically export, commercial transportation, resource industries.
Yeah.
Their demands will not be related to population growth.
No. I think staff will work taking notes. Thanks, Eric.
The second qualification concerns the Chikai fan and the mitigation strategy. We have a memorandum of understanding with the district and between the district and the forest industry that outlines a forestry land strategy for the Chikai fan. Not all of those lands that we are going to be requiring or we're looking for solutions for need a mitigation strategy. And this, it really comes back to the employment land strategy document itself didn't make this clear. So there are uses, potential uses in the Chikai fan that do not require municipal services, and they don't require operations enclosed in a building. So the upshot is that we don't want policy to be holding us up to moving an action plan into the short term. And after all, council is desiring us to make progress on handling of wood waste, whether through handling or processing, and that requires some solutions probably in the Chikai fan. And we wouldn't want to be held up by policy that gets hung up on this language around the mitigation strategy, because we don't need the mitigation strategy for that type of use. Now, Engineering Director Chris Wickham has pointed out that for some types of converting plants, we will need a mitigation strategy. That's up to the investor, and there's a bit of gray area there. But just so that we're not hung up on policy and making progress on identifying land use. And finally, I'd just like to say that the draft OCP policy language has already incorporated these nuanced qualifications, and we'll see those soon. And the planning department and the OCP team have been very receptive and interested in taking our suggestions that we brought forward on fine-tuning policy and land use designations. For example, we think that the backup log sorting issue has probably been solved. We think we've identified a solution for that, and that'll come forward as the OCP draft comes forward. And hopefully in coming weeks, Councillor Blackman-Wolf has referred to placeholders. Yes, we do need to discuss placeholders on Crown land together with the district in moving forward on some of the other elements of that MOU.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Eric. Just to follow up on one point Eric made about articulating somehow, and it'd be good if this married with the OCP, what type of things would or wouldn't need mitigation, or how we would articulate that in policy so that we don't sort of create that confusion right off the bat, and hopefully simplify things if it's unnecessary. And so we're looking for suggestions on how we articulate that.
The best thing I can do is refer us to Matt Gunn, because Matt has worked together with us on just
Jonas,
clarifying language on
that what you were gonna say?
mitigation issue.
You're already on it?
Yes, and also the Chikai fan has zoning right now that in a lot of areas does allow for industrial type activities that don't require permanent buildings to be located there. So there may not be a barrier there now.
Okay.
It's complicated.
Well, I think there's perceived barriers or not, and if you have language that creates that perception of a barrier, then we just need to make sure it's refined.
if I may, perhaps some just fine tuning exactly of the language, because there are steps, obviously, that do allow certain development to go forward within the Cheek Eye Fan. This is to deal with all the other land that's within the Cheek Eye Fan, where there is a mitigation plan required.
Okay. Thanks, Eric, it's always great. I have Jason, Susan, and Ted, and then I would like to move on to the agenda if we covered everything.
Yeah, and I really appreciate Eric's comments on that. And I think that it brings up a very, very important point, which I'm sure that everybody around the table is aware of. Just wanting to highlight it again in terms of we do need to distinguish between, export-based businesses versus local population serving businesses, because that has very different implications usually for the type of jobs, the amount of pay, the amount of
Resilience.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think they need to be treated somewhat differently in terms of how we do that. And thinking a few years down the road, are we going to get to a point, I think because it's council's purview to really make sure that we are setting expectations appropriately with landowners around rezoning of any commercial or industrial lands. And, the lower mainland is really getting to a policy of sort of no more net loss. And I think we're going to be faced with that decision sooner rather than later. And so having a really robust policy on that will allow us I think the clarity so that developers aren't scooping up industrial thinking like, oh, I'm going to get a mixed use residential happening sometime soon. So yeah, very important, but really appreciate the work and congratulations on that work and securing that long-term lease in the BC Rail land, so it's good stuff.
Excellent. Susan and Ted.
Thanks. I'm wondering about the C4 zoning again in the downtown. We had talked about second floor office space. We never really came up with a solution around that. We had parking issues and we haven't really had a robust discussion on that in a while. I'm wondering how that's going and how we're looking at securing professional office space as well in the downtown. C4 zoning really doesn't.
If I may, we just finished the public consultation phase yesterday, actually. We had our last public meeting last night. So we are looking at bringing these proposed bylaws to council in December for first and second reading.
Yeah, and I agree with the no rezoning of employment lands years ago. It's really easy to get caught up in your housing needs, but you're long-term looking at 100 years, and even if you're building employment lands that aren't going to be occupied right away, it means that it's cheaper and more available to the population to grow small business. So I think that, you can overbuild employment lands, but you're looking at 100 years that the building's going to be around, and cheaper employment land is never a bad thing for local employment.
Well, just to Jason's point on the no net loss, I like that kind of wording for industry, particularly, for places where people park their equipment and they don't necessarily have high employment, but we need big chunks of land for that, log sorting, etc.
Just from an OCP point of view, how is that articulated in the OCP class? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No problem. In the OCP,
There's a plan.
thank you. In the OCP draft right now, we do have strong policy language around non-support for conversion or rezoning of employment lands. I can't quote the exact policy for you right now, but it's in the employment lands kind of industrial section as well. So we've tried to create some sort of policy.
Awesome, thank you. Doug, and then we're going to move on. And I'll take the last one.
No, I had a question. So, well, maybe not a
1
question,
minute,
more
and
of a
then
comment, but
more than
and it'll be
35
brief.
minutes.
And so, you don't have to answer today, but one of the things I'd be interested in, because it's come up in this discussion, is the value of the Cheek Eye Fan for employment. Part of it is subject to a zoning application, as you're probably aware, for residential uses, but there's more land up there, and there's land across Squamish Valley Road, more or less in the area of the landfill, There's also land across Government Road around the airport and so forth. And the uncertainty for me is today that residential development has not been approved as of yet, and so there is no barrier. And what are we able to do with that lands? Because I know this came up years ago about subdividing the land around the airport to give them long-term leases, and we were not able to do that because there was no mitigation in place. And that by itself can be a significant impediment to any kind of activity that goes out there if they're somehow part of the larger. And the second thing is, if that development did go through and the contemplated barrier is built that would protect the residential development, what might that allow on the balance of the Chikai Fan lands for industrial or commercial development? Is it the same standard as residential? Could we have buildings, for example? Could we have subdivision to allow for long-term leasing?
There's a huge question in there, and we simply don't have time to get into it.
I don't
right now.
expect the answer today. I was looking for that in the update of the report. That's my comment.
Thank you. So we're going to get an update.
Just to Doug's point there, I was interested that staff are actually still looking at a small berm instead of the, you said you guys are still working on potentially getting employment lands out of that area with a small berm.
We want to speak for it.
It was identified as an option to the other option, which is at the apex of the fan. The issue with it is it would probably reduce the buildable or developable area of the fan.
That's fine, but that's a big point going forward.
Okay, I'm going to look for a motion that we initiate the update 2015. This is coming forward in the budget anyway. Are we getting ahead of the budget with this, or?
I'm sorry?
Is this motion getting ahead of the budget deliberations or not?
It's, this is a conditional
Okay.
on.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Mayor Heinzman, I was thinking the same thing, I think if I'm
yeah, I think you're reading my mind.
is that normally we don't bring projects forward in isolation of the budget. That conditional part actually I put in as I saw this come up to the agenda. Council had asked for an employment lands update in terms of where we're at. This is the proposed next step. That said, if there's a motion from council, it has to be conditional because we are budgeting for it next year.
Maybe I'll suggest that we receive report, thankfully, good job. You can have those words if you want. And we refer it to the budget for consideration.
Great, that's, yeah.
Moved by Councillor Race, second by Councillor Chappelle. I just feel like it gets a little weird when we're putting things before budget, and I just want to make sure it's all being. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Sarah. Moving on, Marine Strategy Phase 2, Economic Development, 5 more minutes, we're now 40 minutes behind. And I need to call my nephew, it's his 6th birthday. 6th? I know, I gotta call him in the next 20 minutes because he's in Ontario. Next step out. Who's that in there? Jason might have to share while I talk to all of our unless we all want to go.
Sing happy birthday.
We could.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Heinzman. Hello, Council. Just wait for my presentation to pop up here. Super. My name is S.McJannet, Community Planning. I'm here with a brief informational touch point for Council to present an update on the Phase 2 Squamish Marine Action Strategy, or MAST. Ran. Been waiting for a long time to use that little thing. Following the RFP that we put out, the district retained Pacifica Blue Consulting in early October to lead development of the action strategy. So Pacifica Blue is a local consultancy headed up by Sandra Bisego, principal, and she brings extensive multi-jurisdictional and marine planning experience to the project. So we are very excited to work with her, and she's out of the country this week, so because of the timing and because we're hosting some December engagement activities, I I'm here to provide an update, but I promise you'll get to meet Sandra in good time. So today, I just wanted to explain the marine strategy, outline the project objectives, talk about the engagement process and plan that we've got in place, give you a sneak peek of the strategic framework for the strategy, and then talk to some of the project activities and next steps. So firstly, for clarity, we wanted to say what the marine strategy is and isn't. So it's not another plan. Rather, the strategy is a framework for action to achieve major overall aims for the marine realm in our community. We have a lot of plans already. We've got downtown plans, Downtown 2000, waterfront area plans, including the oceanfront, waterfront landing, and we've also got technical pieces such as the Integrated Flood Hazard Management Plan that come into play that will guide us in waterfront revitalization. But what we don't have is a strategic piece that brings all those marine components together with stakeholders that allows us to address and align and resource our efforts. So it's really about the interplay of all those pieces. As an example, how do we figure out upland development, sea diking, boat ramps, public access, water use services, and maintain channel navigability. So it's about how all those pieces are functioning together. We also just wanted to highlight for council and the community, we're not necessarily going to solve every marine issue and problem with this strategy, but it is a process that will help us identify them, flush them out, rank them in terms of priority, and provide guidance as to the when, who, how we can work to resolve the specific marine issue or advance a specific marine opportunity. So at the end of the day, at the end of the project, we'll have a complete marine strategy document and an implementation plan that outlines short, medium, and long-term priorities and actions that will help guide decisions, but also help inform community activities, partnerships, and resourcing. In terms of the project objectives, the central tenet of the strategy and the objective is really about trying to mobilize shared leadership. So bringing people together to jointly identify the focus areas, the priorities, and the necessary actions that are needed. The marine area, as you know, is very complex, many interests, many jurisdictional layers, and numerous initiatives that are happening both locally but also within the Howe Sound kind of bioregion, if you will. And so at the end of the day, we're trying to coordinate, work together, and ensure that we are have a strategy that can help guide stewardship and maximizing our marine assets. This might be a little bit harder to read, my apologies. I was in the council report as well. Pacifica Blue has designed a 5-stage process that spans 7 months, so we're already a couple months in, that will take us through the end of March and early April. Stage 1 involved project and engagement planning to set us up for an effective and participatory process. Stage 2 focuses on identifying and developing directions with our stakeholders, so affirming with them the marine focus areas along with the different types of objectives and actions that are necessary. And stage 3 involves working with those stakeholders to prioritize an action plan. Stage 4 is about how to resource the identified priority actions, explore the roles and responsibilities of everyone around the table, and required resources and funding. And stage 5 involves implementation planning once the strategy is endorsed. In terms of who and how we're engaging, we've got an inclusive engagement plan to develop the strategy, a variety of audiences, and we've outlined in the council report the different participation levels and processes that we would like to use and have been using. We've reached out firstly to Squamish Nation to collaborate through interviews and staff liaising. We expect there's going to be some synergies with the nation. They are also undertaking marine use planning currently. We have set up an internal staff working group to provide strategic guidance and technical input. So we've got real estate, economic development, engineering, planning, environment. So we're working together at the staff level. We have a long list of marine subject matter experts and knowledge holders. So we've already begun to engage with those knowledge holders in town. Pacifica Blue has done an initial round of interviews. to provide some guidance for us as we flesh out the focus areas, issues, values, and priorities. Those knowledge holders are going to be joining us along with other marine regulators, agencies, and organizations. We're holding an invitational marine focus session next Wednesday. It's the first of 2. And then we'll also be connecting with the broader community as we go to inform and consult on the draft strategy. We're using a sort of a larger marine forum, a public survey, and then we'll host an initial focus session in the new year. And then as we go, we'll be coming to council to give you updates as we go, and at the end, we'll come to council looking for endorsement of the strategy itself. This just pairs the process along with the engagement activities, and at the bottom of the screen you can see we're kind of bridging between stage 1 and 2, the focus session, the first focus session we're holding next week. Just to give you a flavor of the subject matter experts and knowledge holders that we've been engaging with right out of the gate. We did a lot of stakeholder mapping with Pacifica Blue, and so we've got industry representatives representing forestry, terminals, LNG, all the marine transportation and logistics stakeholders, Harbor Authority. We've invited all of the members sitting around the Squamish Estuary Management Committee table, which includes industry, conservation, recreation, Squamish First Nation and hunting and fishing interests, as well as government agencies. We've been in touch, reaching out to waterfront landowners and developers, stewardship groups, and also our recreation stakeholders. This diagram just gives you a sense of the building blocks for the strategy and how it's framed up. And basically it starts with that overall vision that will help us sort of create a picture around what we're trying to maximize in terms of our local marine assets based on shared values that are identified by and guiding principles identified by the community and stakeholders. We're then going to focus and organize the strategy based on distinct focus areas, which are broad aims that will be determined through the strategy. And then within each focus area, we have objectives and desired outcomes that we're going to be surfacing with stakeholders through the process, along with specific actions at the end of the day at the last level that are going to describe the activities, events, or initiatives that will be undertaken and identified in the marine strategy. So that gives you a sense of how those pieces are working together. This is just a graphic that we had put together a while ago, just around kind of pulling from all of our different community plans and downtown and area plans around sort of the framing of the Squamish marine environment. So it gives you a flavor of some of the things that we've already been articulating. And then this is a highlight of some of the focus areas, just to give you a flavor of how some of those are shaping up based on discussions that we've had in community. We're going to be testing out some of these focus areas with our knowledge holders and participants next week. These aren't the final focus areas, but to give you a flavor, some of the framing could be around actions devoted to maximizing our waterfront gateway versus, or not versus, but in addition to actions focused around economy and downtown revitalization, industry, working waterfront, actions that are focused in around shared leadership and governance, working across sectors, with multiple levels of government and community agencies, and then perhaps a focus area devoted to thriving coastal ecosystems. So really pulling some of the stewardship, restoration, environmental goods and services pieces into a focus area. So this gives you a bit of a flavor of what could be kind of a nebulous concept of the marine strategy, and we just wanted to highlight that for you. And finally, next step, so we're working with Pacifica Blue. We are doing a summary of all the marine-related accomplishments that we've already been up to. to highlight for council and the community. Pacifica Blue is summarizing the inputs that have come from the key informant interviews that have happened over the last couple of weeks. And we're going to be pulling that information into the Marine Focus session in December. And then we'll have a little break, and in the new year, we're going to be planning a big marine forum, which I think is going to be really exciting. So yeah, thank you for listening, and if council has questions or comments, we weren't asking for any motion of council. This is informational, but
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm feeling a little bit giddy, actually, at the moment. Sort of like a child on Christmas morning. It's finally here. You don't have to go to bed each night and ask, how many more sleeps until the marine strategy shows up?
Well, let's adopt it. Let's not celebrate.
And to say I'm happy to see this is an understatement, but when I was reading through this and listening to the presentation, what I wondered was the scope of the strategy in geographical terms. I mean, I get all the focus areas and stuff, but you pointing at me? Oh, sorry. How big? Because as you may know, before, I think it was the term before I was on council, there was talk about a marine strategy, same terms, which was supposed to have about a $500,000 cost, and they applied for a provincial grant, didn't get it, and so the whole thing fell off the table. So my concern is, because up until now, when I've been talking about marine strategy, I've mainly been thinking about the small craft side of it, which is the blind channel and maybe the Cattermole. But when you start bringing in the deep sea and the commercial and LNG and so forth, now you're kind of embracing a much larger picture. Now I'm wondering, you know, for $25,000, I appreciate the economy, but what are we going to get back? Is there going to be anything we can really use? Or is it just going to be a very high-level narrative? Should I start lobbying for phase 3 of the marine strategy? So I'm just curious about that, what you intended to do.
Yeah, and Mayor Heinzman, through you, that's a great question and comment. In terms of the scoping, the geographic scope for the marine strategy, what we've started with is basically the marine areas sort of within the District of Squamish boundary, so that does sort of include sort of the near sea, but we recognize that there's a lot of area sort of marine beyond that, and so we need to be connecting with the marine areas, sort of the connections with lower mainland, and sort of following along like the marine industrial and shipping, I guess like recognizing that there's sort of the local community, there's a larger kind of marine area that deals with connections to lower mainland. And then there's also on the governmental layer, there's regional initiatives, and then, you know, the pieces around, for example, the Howe Sound Forum, where we've got many different governments within sort of the Howe Sound region that are working on marine initiatives and things like that. So it's going to pick up those pieces, but keep in mind that the scope of it, it's for, like, the district is undertaking it. It's really to help us guide our own decisions and resourcing, but it's also going to be highlighting other governments, other agencies and organizations that are also tied in with work that we're doing, or that have like influence over the work that we're doing. So I don't know if that's helpful. We're going to be talking a little bit more about scope.
Basically includes all the waters on the ocean.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, we're engaging with wood fiber LNG, we're engaging with landowners and agencies that are like Darrell Bay, so it's not necessarily just sort of Mount Blind Channel or Cattermole or kind of estuary area, it's sort of inclusive of the larger marine area within the District of Squamish.
And maybe part 2 of Doug's question is, does it get it to a point of planning where we have a launching point for decision? Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
I think it will. I think that as we go through the process, what might become apparent is that there's more work to be done, and it will help surface what those areas, or what that what that work is or needs to be done, and so I think other things could emerge from it, absolutely. But we wanted to start with a tight, concise, doable strategy to start, and I think because it's based centrally around that shared leadership piece, I think it could be a process that helps catalyze some further discussion and further work and partnerships. So it could grow into something bigger potentially. That's hard to say.
And just, if I may follow up, because from my perspective, the reason we brought it forward was because of pending development pressure on the Blind Channel. At least that was my concern, so that we had something to make these land use decisions and water use decisions with. That was the immediate concern, and to a lesser extent, there's parts of the Cattermole where that applies to as well. I mean, the other stuff's great. I want to be able to, when you talk about launching decisions, I think the ones along the Blind Channel are the ones that are probably first up the most, just because of the way the place is laid out. But eventually, we're going to have to deal with other areas, Watts Point and so forth. There's all kinds of waterfront and water-related industry areas. So great. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Yeah, my sentiments too, that's great. I had a bunch of questions and then you kept answering them and then answering them. Oh, that's good.
Makes a good report.
Yeah, I did think though about, derelict vessels, and I think that's going to be addressed, and, people anchoring in the harbor. And then the one thing that I think council's talked about before was ownership of, all the lands out to Watts Point. To take more control, and I guess all that's being covered, right? That looks really good, environment.
Thank you. Excellent. So there's no direct motion other than we received the report, is that right? Motion to receive? Motion to receive by Councilor Secretary by Councilor Elliott. The report, I think we're all, I think Doug said this came up in my first term, and I think the imperative is to move forward on this now, so we need to, and it's great to see it moving along. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we have our Community Enhancement Grant Program. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? I think we're a little bit bug-eyed right now. Thank you. We're back in our committee of the whole meeting, and we're on item 4 of the business agenda, and Community Enhancement Grant Program.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, my name is Lily Marie Peterson.
Welcome.
I'm a clerk with the Finance Department. I'm here today with a short PowerPoint presentation regarding the 2018 Community Enhancement Grant Program, along with Chief Financial Officer Christine Matthews. We would like to provide you with a brief summary of the program and discuss a few administration issues. We're also here to answer any questions that you may have as you review this year's applicants. So the current Community Enhancement Grant Policy requires all applicants to submit their application by October 1st each year to be considered in the next year's budget. Council must review all applications in public session and determine the funding for each request before December 31st of each year. At this point, we take this opportunity to direct Council's attention to Section 2.1 of the policy, which is included in your supplementary material for your reference. This section outlines the eligibility of each applicant. We believe this may be a particular important reference point in your decision-making process for this year's applications. Yes, and so in alignment with the Community Enhancement Grant process, today we ask that Council review the information provided by the applicants, and if needed, Council may wish to invite any applicants as a delegation before final decisions are made. Please note I have tentatively booked time for December 18th, should this be the case. Under the Community Enhancement Grant Program policy, up to 1% of the prior year's budgeted general taxation may be set aside specifically for the general Community Enhancement Grant Program, but funding sources may vary. So last year the policy cap was therefore $244,540. The final 2017 budget allocated for community enhancement grants was $278,236. This final budgeted amount included alternate funding sources from the community amenity contributions in the amount of $30,000, $10,000 from reserve, donations from Whistler Back Home Foundation for Squamish BMX Racing Club in $40,000, and donations from trail maintenance initiatives for $2,800, as well as $25,000 for Squamish Arts Council funded from accumulated surplus. This results in a net impact of $170,436 from general revenues. The amount's different on the report due to the skate club was approved after the report was submitted. So there's an extra $886 on top of the amount. So based on the 2017 budgeted general taxation, the total community enhancement grant program for 2018 may extend up to $260,326, and cumulative multi-year grants may not exceed $78,097. For 2018, we have received one application for a multi-year grant, and that's the Squamish Arts Council. They've requested a multi-year grant to alleviate the uncertainty of their community support every year. As a reminder to Council regarding the policy on multi-year grants, they may not exceed 3 years in duration, and that the purpose is for the applicant to secure matching multi-year funding from other organisations. Okay, so before we move on to the application review, we would like to discuss some administrative issues for this year's program. As noted before, this year in 2017, there was $17,715 worth of grants issued from contingency after the 2017 budget was completed. So therefore, we ask Council if they would like to again assign a contingency for any late or unforeseen applicants in 2018.
And I'll just step in here if you don't mind. Mayor Heinzman, last year Council had talked about maybe putting a contingency portion into the grant line as well, and then ended up deciding to just use their $50,000 regular Council contingency. That continues to support the program enough, generally, from our trends prior to this, and then even this year, even though the grants were a little bit higher with the campground and a few other things, we still are within our $50,000 contingencies.
Thank you.
That actually,
Are we at the point where we can ask some questions? Are we good?
We've got one more slide, and actually
Okay.
I was just going to just address the other issues, but I have Squamish Arts Council up there, but I don't believe we're going to be discussing that. Or the Royal Canadian Legion is definitely one that we should discuss, but at this point I'd like to refer to Chief Financial Officer.
actually, sure. I'll jump in here again if you don't mind. Couple of things. One of the things that was referred to budget, which I think might be more appropriate here, is the discussion around the community foundations and their neighborhood small community grant. That's not in your package, so you might want to put that on your, might want to think about that as well. And I think that's probably what we're thinking about with the Squamish Arts Council. The Squamish Arts Council, I believe, is in your package. It includes their request to do a bit more of a partnership concept with council, and I'm hoping the mayor knows a bit more about that than we do, but that was, again, one of their key requests. One of the things with the Royal Canadian Legion that I wanted to broach council about is under our new policy, we do require that grant applicants from 2017 now submit reporting to tell us what they did with their funds, etc. We're wondering if council would want to continue that with an organization like the Canadian Legion, where they truly are supplementing what we consider to be quite a community event. Their application is generally about, I think, $460 of in-kind service. I'm just wondering if we really want to make them go through that rigmarole before we issue a grant name for the current year. So that's what I wanted to put on the table with you today. We kind of had a discussion with the events manager to talk about whether there was other similar type things, but we really feel that this is the only one of this particular type where it's truly community-wide and very small request.
Yeah, and I've had this conversation with the Legion in the past, and I think particularly now that it's outside, it's in the park, it's on the street, we can take care of the logistics of that and work with them, obviously, in any planning, but just simply take over the logistics of that. So I would be totally supportive of that. If there's any opposition of that opinion on council, we'll explore it, but I think, yeah, absolutely, I think that's somewhere we can go with that. Is that on that topic, Ted? Or?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
What, do you want to take through these three right now, or?
If you'd like to, that would probably get some of them out of the way and get us back to the list.
So, I mean, we can, I guess the contingency piece, we can sort of either discuss at the end of the process where we know where we are, or philosophically, do we want to just maintain it within council contingency, or do we want to create a specific family contingency? So I'll just open that up to council. We can certainly defer it until after we've deliberated on all of them if you want, but I don't see any hands either way.
Well,
Councilor,
going back and forth on this one, I think I'd be inclined to leave it at council contingency. If we have a lump of money there, it's unallocated. People might get the idea it's just too easy to get, and I'd just rather retain, if they go through the process, this is when we'll deal with it. If not, it's a bit of a question whether they should have gone through the process as well as the merits of the grant. So I'd rather leave it in the second contingency.
any other thoughts on that? So why don't we we'll leave it with council contingency for now. We can revisit, but that's sort of the, yeah.
I did have another question. Excuse me. Several weeks ago, we talked about, at least I talked about, potential for a municipal contribution to the Ocean Watch Marine Reference Guide project. And the placeholder I mentioned, and it still hasn't been determined, was $10,000. But it was $10,000 a year for 3 years. And you may recall I asked for staff to come back with some options for a 3-year commitment, whether it would be in the grant and aid as a 3-year thing, or if there was something else. So just, I didn't want to lose that one. Just
Yeah, I
so-
think I would suggest that that actually is a planning / budget item and isn't a grant aid. We're not funding a joint project with a whole bunch of other municipalities, so.
It was a 3-year
Normally, we would
commitment.
do that as an operating budget
Yeah,
if
so I
we're
think
in
make
a
sure,
partnership.
but make sure it comes back in the budget deliberations. I think we don't want to lose track of it, so Councillor. I don't think it's a grant aid.
No, well, it was the 3-year commitment part that I thought might fit in the grant aid program because we do 3-year commitments, but if there's another option, I'm happy to look at that.
I'm open to either, but if it's, normally when we do like interagency partnerships and things, we do treat it as just a regular operating line and part of delivering municipal service, so we could bring it back as part of the budget process.
And just on the Squamish Arts Council, I just had some preliminary discussions with them. What they, I think, would like to see is they be considered more like SORC is considered in terms of community partnership or SAR or I think there's 3. There's Tourism Squamish, SAR, and SORCA that we sort of deal with in a bit of a 3-year community partner, and it's not sort of just a one-off program, it's more of a collaborative delivery of particular service in the community, and so I think that's what they're hoping that we'll consider is more of that model instead of lumping them into just the annual grants and aid program. They'd like to sort of elevate the relationship with us to a more of a partnership level, because we kind of created that delineation within the program a little bit.
We have, may I speak to that?
Please.
We have some different relationships. So our SARS is absolutely almost like a contract for service. We have a very specific contract with them, and we treat them out of the emergency management program. Tourism Squamish, same idea. We actually partnership with them. We went for a call for proposal to have them run our tourism facility. So we're very much in a contracted relationship with them. The question of SODC came up a few years ago in terms of whether we should enter a partnership agreement with them. We talked about it internally. Our concern there is that a lot of their trail building is on private lands, not municipal lands. And SORCA. Sorry. SODC.
I was confused.
Don't mind me, I've got SODC on my mind. With the SORCA relationship, exactly. So we were kind of, do we want to be a bit more arm's length with them, provide them a grant and aid? Yes, we generally sustain that grant and aid every single year, and we use our provisions to do that, but we don't enter a contract for service with them, and that takes away some ambiguities around risk management, liability, building on private lands, blah, blah, blah. And so we have actually left them in the grant and aid pot, and they do apply to us every year. I did also check in with Rosalind because there was a request to check their relationship, and I have confirmed that they essentially do the same, that it's through their grant and aid programs. They apply annually for the trail maintenance grants that they get through Rosalind as well. So, and that came directly from the CFO. So that's that relationship, and then the
So just
arts
on that.
Yeah, do they fund a trail coordinator though?
They may. I didn't ask that question. I asked them how they funded their Trails Society.
Right, I completely understand the liability issues and respect that. But I do believe that Rosalind funds a trail coordinator, so that may be a place where we can actually allot funds for a trail coordinator instead of actually saying, here's $70,000 to build on a thing on private lands or however we do it, which leaves us at risk. However, I also think there's innovative ideas with Tourism Squamish that money can be, that we can look at Tourism Squamish funding as well. There may be the innovative ways that we can, I just think that, $70,000 is a big hunk of money to come out of our community grants. It's definitely worth funding trails, but maybe we can eke more funds out if we come out with a little bit more of an innovative way to do that, being that it is tourism support, like hotel tax or.
Well, that's not a tax.
Isn't it going to Tourism Squamish?
Goes to Tourism
It
Squamish.
goes straight through.
Which is not we can't tell them what to do with their money. Their money's generated from hotel tax to go directly into marketing tourism. It's a DMO, it's not a.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Just on the SORCA, in past years, we've funded about $40,000, I'm going with memory, out of that IPP fund.
30,000 comes from community amenity contributions year over year that we receive from
Canadian and Power. Or
Thank you, yes. Name was escaping.
And is that available this year?
Yes.
It's available every year, for 40 years, I believe.
As far as I know, it's ongoing.
We haven't spent it on something else?
I've not, yeah, that's
No,
right.
I think a couple years
We've not.
ago, we sort of earmarked it for that purpose.
Most of it, not all of it, no.
Yeah, 30 of the 40, I think, or something like that.
We're right now funding at a $30,000 level.
But I think their contribution yearly is 40. Is it not, or maybe?
It was a bit extra.
I thought there was, yeah.
Yes, that may be true. I'd have to go back and check our
So
community.
it might be growing a reserve somewhere if we haven't allocated it.
We do put it to a community amenity contribution provision. So all of our community amenities flow through there if they're not already designated to go to the Affordable Housing Reserve or something.
But we have, let me clarify, we get, let's just say 40 for argument's sake, from Canadian Power every year. 30 is being
Allocated to sort.
allocated to sort of through the community enhancement grant. There's a bit of extra that's been accumulating in that reserve. So when we get back to budget, maybe
We can review that.
Understand that.
I think we spent some of it last year.
We might have, yeah.
Just to be clear then, out of the $85,000, 30 of it is already taken care of. And so really what we're considering is the other 55. And the source of that.
Whatever that
That's more than last year.
Oh, I realize that, but we've got 30 of it already. Thank you.
Okay, so that covers what we already do with regard to the Squamish Arts Council. They have a proposal for this, if that, do they not in here?
Yes, basically asking for a bit of a partnership. Apply for a multi-year funding for this program to help the arts community and groups who look to apply for funding each year and do not apply to the district's community enhancement grants as they are deferred or referred to the SAC grant.
So does council want to invite them here to maybe talk about it, explore the idea further with them?
So on that note, we should probably mention, and I don't know if you'd rather or I would, but as per last year, as you see, we don't have any delegations here, but that's one of the things we should have opened up and let you obviously weigh in on. At any point in here, we're happy to bring a delegation back. We just would need to know from council who you would like to bring back, and I believe right now that's tentatively set for December the 18th. So that would potentially make sense if you'd like to.
Okay. Doug?
Well, just to be clear about the Arts Council, because what it shows here in item number 3 is enhancement grant 20,400 and grant aid 2350. But is that what we're talking about? Is there something else?
There was a 20 and there was an additional 25, correct?
Oh, okay, that's not on this list? At least I
Of
haven't
the
come here.
25,000.
Can you, well, for last year we used accumulated surplus
Yeah.
to provide them 25,000 so they could start a bit of a provisional partnership concept, but it was just for 1 year. So if they're looking for that in addition to this 20,000, it's not included here right now.
They didn't submit that?
It's not on their
Okay.
specific application, their application was for 20, but they do talk about wanting this multi-year
Yeah.
commitment
So,
from us.
Karen?
So
They're not
I think
requesting
the Arts
it.
Council has submitted their request for 20,000 for 3 years, which is their grant that they do the pass-through. Within their application is the request for partnership. Now, I'm not sure that was the most strategic way to come at it because it got lost in community enhancement grant. I do think we should invite them in and have a conversation about it. But it doesn't necessarily need to be as part of the community enhancement grant. It does need to be as part of the budget. They're kind of separate unless they think we're going to fund that partnership through the grant process, which we could always choose to do.
Yeah, I guess the partnership process is separate from the grant process, is that correct or not?
I'm unclear on that, to be frank. They're asking for about 20,000. If you can provide more clarity, please do.
So Cindy Lyons is coming in. She's already booked time in from the Squamish Arts Council to come in on December 12th, and she'll be discussing with you her plans for the community partnership then. Already. So if you want to get some more clarification, that could be then, and also maybe get more light on their application as well at the same time. I spoke with her yesterday, and she said she's happy to do that at the same time, if need be.
Does that help?
Partly. So item number 3, 20,400. So that's one of 3 years. So we're actually considering 3 years at that rate?
I'm not clear, honestly, Council, as to whether they want the partnership to be in addition to this regular grant level.
Okay.
That's why I think it would make
We'll have
sense
to
for
hear
them to
about
come
that,
in
yeah.
and explain more about what they're proposing.
But we can consider as part of the community enhancement grant, the funding flow through that goes to the other streets. We can consider that piece of it. We'll have them come back to talk about the partnership possibilities and how we might consider that or structure that. Is that right?
That sounds fine with, sounds like a great plan.
Flow through.
So this is a 1 year ago. Item number 3 is a 1 year flow through.
I think they were asking for 3 years consideration for
Stability.
stability. It's been pretty stable. I'm not sure we want to, I think more the partnership one we would want to maybe consider a 3-year possibility. I'm not sure with it's totally up for discussion, but it's been pretty stable.
Generally, our requirement is that it's so they can leverage another grant. That's generally why we allow multi-year grants in the policy, is that it allows, if there's a provincial or another funding agency, they want some certainty around multi-year funding, then we have this provision in our policy to allow us to enter that so that they can secure that funding. Generally, we go year to year.
Yeah, so I don't think for the annual one, going through all the different groups, like between shifts, et cetera, they do it on an annual basis anyway, and on an individual basis anyway, so I'm not sure it's necessary for that. But I think for the partnership model, Cindy's walking in. She was watching it at home going, what are we doing? Gotta get there, thanks, Cindy. Karen.
Well, I was going to say that there is arts funding out there, and if we show the Arts Council that they've got 20,000 for the next 3 years, they can start writing those grants and match that, so they can turn that 20,000 into 60,000. But if it's not there and it's not committed, they can't do those applications in advance. So I think that's the advantage of giving them that $20,000 commitment for 3 years. Is they can anticipate that.
Except it's not them, it's this program here and this theater group here, and It's,
But
they're just
they're only
managing it,
limited.
they're managing a fund.
Yeah, but they're limited because we're only giving them $20,000. They can take our 20,000, turn it into 60, and then hand out those grants to all of our arts groups. I mean, they had an 80% increase or something in the number of applications they got. So if they can take $20,000, which they know they're gonna get from us for the next 2 years, and turn that into $60,000, they've got more funding
To flow through
to the groups. So so to me, it's kind of strategic for arts in the community is to make that commitment on the flow through grants, and they can try and turn that into much, much more.
Might we hear from Sydney?
Yeah, Sydney, join us. Thanks for, you had the panic look in your walk as you ran out the door.
Sorry, I just ran so a little out of breath.
So Sydney, if I might,
Yeah, please.
two questions. So first of all, we have an Arts Council request for $20,400 cash and $23.50 in kind. And so my first question is that a 1-year ask or is that a 3-year ask?
So we've structured two different things here.
My second question is there another ask?
Yes, so yes, and yes, pretty much. So we have the arts grant in front of us here, which is the $20,000 ask. So that is the, so that's the group member grant that we provide to arts groups in communities to fundraise initiatives and programs. It's probably important to note that we do have a scheduled meeting for December 12th, which was the time in which we were going to come and like unroll everything, show you guys what we've been doing, all the awesome stuff. And then, so yeah, so that is a multi-year ask. The reason why we ask multi-year is because there is a bit of uncertainty for arts groups. So for example, like between Schiss Theater, they don't apply to the community grant because they apply to the Arts Council grant, but we don't know if we get the grant or not, so they could miss their opportunity to apply and receive funding that year. So that's why we ask for multi-year, so to create a bit more certainty.
So that is a multi-year ask.
That's
And then in addition, and I guess we're going to hear about it on the 12th, there's another request for 3 years for, I guess, pure Arts Council funding for, and you'll tell us what it's for then.
Yeah, exactly. So there's an additional ask for a community partnership via the community partnership policy.
Right.
And so that might, depending on how that breaks out into how you guys strategically place finances, that could be in this pot, but we hope it would be in like general operating or another.
Yeah, no, thanks. It was just a matter, at least for me, clarifying
Definitely,
what it
for
was
sure.
there for.
And that's why I just think it was two.
Are there any other questions from council? No? Did you want to add something else?
No, that's just why I ran here to clarify those 3 items, and yeah, you guys can continue to deliberate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for 2018, there's a total of 36 applications were received. The total ask for all applications is $298,220. All applications were reviewed for completeness and missing information or supporting documentation was requested from the applicant. Almost all applications are complete except for only 2, that's the Downtown Business Association and Don Ross Middle School. In addition, a Schedule B of the policy was completed for every application that's provided as well. So we have prepared a summary of the applications in alphabetical order, which is the blue table, as well as the Community Enhancement Grant Policy and the applications along with the checklist are all available. Please note there's an administration error on the application summary regarding the Squamish Arts Council. David Thompson did not in fact have any involvement in this year's grant application, as the name was just carried over from last year. So at this time, I'm going to bring up the extra supplementary summary that I just gave out before the meeting started, and I prepared that to complement the large group.
Okay, I have Councillor Elliott, Councillor Race.
So, so we get the in-kind and cash request. Near the end of the hospice application, they list some of their events. And then they put facility not applicable, and then the hike for hospice lists Junction Park and Ocean Pavilion. And it says 0 amount, but then there's no supporting documentation in terms of waiving rental fees or an in-kind request for those events, and I know, so I'm curious if, Devin, you worked with them before, if they need in-kind requests and they've just missed them in their application, or if we're good with just the cash?
Because they're designated a registered charity, their fees are already waived for rental of the pavilion and the event permit fee.
Councilor Race?
Thank you. And I think I might have missed it, but the policy is we should be spending potentially 1% of last year's budget on grants. Do you have that number? I didn't get that number.
So that's the regardless of funding source. So and that's a key distinction. If you don't want to have an impact on next year's budget, then you'd need to maintain it at the $170,000 level that was tax impacted. Does that make sense for everybody? So last year, we actually granted at this time last year about $213,000, but there were several sources of funding, including the $10,000 from our, for the curling club that was coming from our carbon neutral reserve, and I believe $30,000 from the SORCA. So that reduced it back down to about $170,000 level.
So really that should be about our target, I think?
For tax revenue. So obviously SORCA, you're getting also that $30,000 still. So so that takes you basically to about a $200,000 level. Clear as mud?
Yeah.
No, I get that. Thank you.
On the BIA one, is that, Canada Day, is that an extra above and beyond what we paid them already, that they've asked for there?
So we have, as you know, we have the BIA taxation schematic, and that funds about $87,000 a year towards downtown improvement projects of their choosing. On top of that, they also come in and ask for these grant amounts.
How are we doing? Any other questions? We're going to start, did you want to start to go through these, or how do you want to do that?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just about wrapping it up. I just wanted to just mention that the extra tables that I did hand out supplement the blue table, and I've divided it up into returning applicants, which is the orange table, and new applications, which is the purple table, to make it a bit easier to go through, considering the blue tables in alphabetical order. And I've also broken them up into in-kind requests, cash requests, and in-kind and cash requests on each page.
Maybe that's actually a good way to prioritize how we make these decisions. Why don't we focus in on the in-kind requests, both new, just in-kind only, just the new ones and the additional one that seems to be a youth craft one. Any in there that council wants to discuss or pull out to consider separately? They seem to all fit in with our criteria.
The only there is a flagging written on the right of the grant amount, if to bring to attention. I think there's just a few that just might cross over, which is why I did say regarding the policy of eligibility. But because some might be profit or festivals, profit enterprises.
Generally do.
So just a few, but not too many.
That's the craft beverage
We
one.
certainly don't do festivals for profit. We have done community event festival type things for like a lot of sports.
Yes.
Right. So can you just, which one have you highlighted that? Oh, the craft.
The craft beer.
Right, yeah, no, that was both cash and in-kind, and I was just going to do just in-kind right now. Karen?
Yeah, the in-kind also, maybe just refer, this application is also flagged because he didn't actually know what the in-kind value is going to be for. So there's no supplementary
Are you talking
material.
about the craft beverage one?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's both cash and in-kind, so I was going to leave that to another decision, but, so in-kind is BC Whippet Club, Brackendale Farmers Institute, Firefighters Association, Housetown Secondary School, Housetown Women's Center, Logger Sports, Minor Hockey, Pirates Club, Royal Canadian Legion, and with the additional, don't need to actually submit the report, I think It'd be nice just to take them off the list and we just work with them to do the Remembrance Day in the future. Unless there's an additional thing, then they would come forward. But for Remembrance Day, skating club and youth triathlon. So that block, everyone okay with that block? Councillor Elliott?
I'm totally okay with that block. But remember last year we asked the condo to fund the Bracknell Farmers Market for that fee? Did that ever happen?
Devin.
Currently, to date, it's an outstanding invoice on the district books.
Unbelievable.
Oh, remember that?
Snow blockade coming.
Yeah. Okay. That was my question.
We'll put
I'm
that
good
in
with
the good
block.
to know column.
Yeah, that's in the good to know
Snow
column.
back in the cows out in the highway.
That's right, we are now.
So, do you want a motion for that?
Yeah.
Cows?
You do the cow one, I'll do this one. I'll move those.
Okay, those ones that I just listed, moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries.
And that includes waiving the requirement for Legion.
Yes, and I think we just take them out of this process and we do this and they do logistics and it's an annual event that we are co-hosting if we want to. They're the lead. We want to make sure it's what they want to do. But. So that's that. Check, 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 check. And check. I'm going to pull out any sort of for-profit festival. Why don't we pull them out now and just, they're not in compliance with our policy. Does anyone want to consider for-profit festival support? Okay. Councillor Elliott and Councillor Buxton.
Well, the question is, are they for profit?
So the issue with the Craft Beverage Association, they're brand new, they've been for about a month. So he's not even quite sure.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's the association, it's not the beer festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a new festival that they're planning, as I said.
So maybe we should ask them to come and give us, present.
Yeah.
Just for clarification too, they will be charging an entry fee, as I understand it. And we generally don't go there. It's
Well,
also a
before
conglomeration
starts.
of businesses. So you've got to be a little bit, it's a little gray as to whether we're assisting businesses.
Yes.
I like the idea of the festival. I just wonder if there might be some other place where they could get funding for this. I'm thinking like economic development dollars or tourism dollars or something like that. I'm just not sure it's a good community enhancement type of thing. I mean, number one, it's restricted in terms of age. And you know, number two, there's ticket sales and you know, we want to be supportive of the emerging craft brewers in our community, but I just wonder if there's another way. And maybe does staff have any comments on that as far as other, you know?
I certainly support that concept as well. I think that it's better as an economic driver, or maybe it's something the BIA wants to look at supporting independently, but I tend to agree. It doesn't necessarily align specifically with council's strategic priorities, and I think there are a lot of agencies here that are very much more global in their community involvement.
I don't disagree with your comments, although one of our criteria in this is actually economic development. And so it's trying to weigh what those opportunities look like that we would grant versus the ones that we don't. And so that's where I'm struggling with this one is this a way to get something started and promote some economic development for a year? Or is this really for profit and it's right, it's restricted and there's only so many of our community members that can join. And so I'm struggling with the criteria around economic development and what we would approve and what we would.
Councillor.
So can we not then have them come and present to us so we can get the details and background around what he's intending to do?
Yeah, I think either way we'll park this, see where we get with everything else, and then revisit it. So let's just go back to the existing ones, the returning applicants. We have the Air Cadets. Any opposition to that one? Don't see any. Once we go through all these, we'll do a motion just to ratify them all together. Big Brothers Big Sisters, I can't remember, is this one more than last year, or is this same amount?
Oh, no.
No, it's been right.
It adds, it,
1,400 more.
right, it was 10 last year, yeah. Any issues with the Big Brothers Big Sisters? Councilor Ray?
Not with them, but with the amount, I think that's a bit of a discussion point, whether we want to impact the tax roll this year. So maybe I could suggest that we
Well,
either,
we park that for now.
yeah, come back to that and we see what else is out there.
Yeah, some of the big ones we just might want to
Yeah.
park for further discussion. Climate Action Network, they have the annual schoolyard, food education workshop series at Eco Home Hop.
And we funded that before.
We always get value added from anything they do. Anyone have a problem with Squamish Can? Okay. Hospice Society,
No problem.
Councillor Elliott?
So I'm not gonna say no to this, but we have to be careful because we said in our thing that we would support operating grants for a year and then people have to be self-sustaining, and they're calling theirs operating grants. And so in terms of alignment with our policy, it
Doesn't quite align.
because it's not associated with an event or a program, let's say. So we might just want to provide them with that feedback on the alignment. So
Jason Wilson.
I remember us discussing this last year when it came up, and then we all kind of said, oh, okay, well, it's a needed sort of social services gap, and it's kind of one of those exceptions in my view, but not to say that we can't, yeah, we can't communicate with our health authority counterparts to, let them know how good of a service and essential a service it is.
So I'm hearing support for that one, but I think we work on them with how they articulate their grant.
Would you like us to include that in the letter back, indicating
Yeah.
that we are looking for
Because
more of a
fundamentally, it's
one-off
supporting
project?
families, it's supporting volunteers.
Yeah.
And I think it should be articulated that. I'm gonna just park the Macomb River Access Society one for a moment. Non-profit network, a grant, to cover facility rental and breakfast for community events. It's new, I didn't know that.
are you in conflict on this?
So this is a year's worth of breakfast, is that?
No, I do an event, I breakfast with them on a yearly basis to talk about volunteerism and that type of thing, and I didn't know that that's what they were asking for. Am I in conflict on this? Robert? They don't have to use it for this, I think they're just doing an IE, but.
You have to pay for
No,
that.
that it's specific, because that's for the National Volunteers Week. That's why they want to hold the breakfast with you.
Yeah.
I would think you're biased.
Well, yeah, because otherwise I think they said to know the muffins out of my pocket, so.
Yeah.
I guess I'll step out, should I step out?
Yes.
Thanks.
Jason rammed us through.
I can go to the bathroom.
Okay, so we're canvassing item nonprofit network grant to cover facility rental and breakfast for the annual community event breakfast with the mayor in the amount of $500. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Which facility did you use?
The agent library, I think last time.
Library.
Sure.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
She's in the bathroom, you should stay there.
Okay, we'll go on to the next one. We're gonna park Sorka. I know
Should we
that
let her
for
know
sure.
she's
Volunteer drivers for cancer program. How do we feel about that? I know it was supported last year in the same amount. We all felt that, again, we're covering a bit of a gap in our system, so.
And just to notice that it's a little bit higher than last year.
So is gas.
So, what is the amount higher?
Last year was 2,500 and this year they're requesting 4,000.
4,000. I see
Yeah, come on.
comfort with that one, so, and we're just on the volunteer drivers for cancer program. And I think we're
We will cover the two.
Consensus on that one. We skipped Sorka.
Volunteer, are we there? Any comment or opposition to that? Don't see it. Just continue down the list. Did we, I was out of the room, did we come to a resolution on the Arts Council?
No.
So we're gonna park that one?
Did you want to park it, or I was going to deal with it?
Oh, if you want to deal with it, sure. Well,
So this
certainly
is
the in-kind part we can, for sure. Yeah.
Well, this is one of two asks.
Yes.
And this is for 3 years. And this is the one that gets distributed out to the various groups within the community and is consistent with previous years. So I'd be prepared to support that for 3 years.
And the in-kind portion as well?
Yeah.
So-
The in-kind might change from year to year, but because that's fees and stuff, I think. But,
Yeah.
I just want to note as well that if this does get approved, that they're asking for early release of the funds too before budget.
yeah, okay.
Well, and before our
Well,
requirement,
early
our
release
wage.
in January, I'm assuming.
So just to clarify too, that our policy requires that they provide reporting for the prior year before we release the new funds. So if you are interested in doing some early releases, if we could just ask that you make it contingent on them providing us their paperwork earlier.
And would it have to be in the new year, in the new fiscal year? Or?
For the release,
Yeah.
technically, yes, yeah. we would have to.
So maybe we'll actually entertain a motion to make sure that's really clear. Councilor Reyes, do you want the motion forward?
Sure. So 20,400 cash and in-kind of 2350 per year for the years 2018, 19, and 20 inclusive, with early release of those monies in 2018,
Based on,
conditional upon receipt of reporting for the previous year.
Can I just clarify and make sure that early release in 2018, 2019, 2020, just to make sure we're not
Okay.
releasing all 3 years?
You want to do that?
early release on an annual basis. And
Annually, yes.
are they asking for January release every year? Is that what they're asking?
February?
Or,
But yes.
Well, it gets the money out to the other people, so.
yeah.
Great, thank you.
Did you get that, Sarah?
Yep.
Sarah behind? Second by Councilor Kent. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. We have the BIA, and this is their sort of 3 big events, one of which is Friday. Council? Did you speak about the incomplete application at all? Did you want to speak to that?
Do you want me to speak to it?
Absolutely.
I would hazard a guess that the incomplete application is a result of the executive director's resignation, and therefore the board having to take over the rest of the application. So with them in a bit of transition right now, I present you that information.
And the in-kind is the same as last year, ish?
It's a little bit higher by about, well, it was $4,080. Sorry, I don't have my glasses, so I'm really squinting here now. They're asking for $5,000.
Usually the in-kind is fairly specific. I'm just curious why this isn't. Do they not know the exact amount? Okay, so you can't show me in 2 seconds. Is this a bit of the confusion over not having an ED right now, maybe?
It could be, it could also be the operational costs, the required increase in operational costs. I'd have to look at their application to be specific. It could also be just the fact that they were rounding up.
They rounded up $1,000.
That's what they, yeah?
They rounded up 20%.
Yeah.
25.
So
this doesn't match what is in here, right?
maybe we'll get some clarity on what we're actually moving on the in-kind piece. And what was last year's, just want clarification, what was last year's ask in terms of the actual ask? Is that what you're gonna ask about, Kelly?
It's 11,500. I was gonna ask why it's higher.
Okay. We can ask them to come speak to us if we have more questions. Okay, maybe we'll ask the IA to come give us more clarification, because that's $5,000 more than last year.
Yes, with the proposed same 3 events.
Yeah.
So there's,
An exponential increase for the same 3 events. Okay, so we'll ask the IA to come present that. And Senior Center Society, liquor, this is the one that works out of the 55. Liquor license, insurance, and facility rental for senior social events. Well, I'm just referring back and forth to different, remind me, is this the same as last year? It doubled, is it based on more events? Is this what they're trying to do?
I'd say so.
Anyone have a problem with the in-kind? I don't think anyone has a problem with that. Anyone have a problem with the request?
It's for more.
What's that?
More events.
Yeah, I'm happy to support that. Anyone object to it?
Oh.
Okay, that one passes. We're going to have the Craft Beverage Association come, is that correct? We've determined that already?
Are they coming, or were they decided? No, sorry, I was just making sure.
I think with a new event like that, I think we want
Bring
to,
in, okay.
we get some details on that. Next one, so we've done all the orange, except for the ones we want to come back to, is that right? We're now on the cash request only for the purple.
Conflict?
On, you just have to declare it.
I'm declaring conflict associated with the line court.
Thank you.
So they suggested the triple. Yes.
On this one, any thoughts? I mean, there's another group like this out there, and I just worry that this is setting up requests for something we might not want, and because councillors involved, I think there is an added layer of consideration. It's not the tipping point, but something to consider. Councillor Elliott.
I guess I have some questions, because one of the criteria that we look at in our policy is viability, and this is a lot of money. They're just getting started, and I can see that this is probably part of how they see themselves being successful. There's also a lot of money to invest for us in capital without a proven history. Their statement, financial statement, doesn't include a line for revenue. So I don't know what that looks like for this year. And I understand they want to do it because they want to offer the space to not-for-profits and that sort of thing, but like, not-for-profits have a really good way of finding space for free to do what they need to do, and yeah, it'd be great to have space, but we now have Center Point that's got space, and so I'm just a little bit nervous about this one because I'm not sure all the facts are there, and it's a lot of money. So yeah.
I'd be interested in having a presentation on this one, again, as a first-time applicant. I definitely have some questions. I'd like to learn more about sort of their operational model and how it might be accessible after hours, or those kinds of things. And then clearly the amount is generally higher than what we give on a first-time basis. So I might be more leaning towards a smaller amount if I'm satisfied that there's a community benefit for it. But I think we would need to have that discussion with the applicant.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it goes into detail about what the audiovisual, are they looking for
There's
a machine like that?
There's a detail quote, flat screen TVs, projectors, it's automated, like one switch you walk in the room and it turns everything on for you. Like, it's very high-end, for sure. It's not just a projector and a screen.
I'm going to suggest we park that one for now, and we may invite them in for further exploration. Okay, can someone get Councillor Shelby's?
Chair.
Yeah.
Can I ask, I need to phone my kids and make sure they're organized for their EBSCO activities. Could you do the quest ones?
Right now?
I can recuse myself.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you. I have a contract with Quest, so I'm in conflict.
You should recuse yourself.
I'm going to recuse myself.
I don't think you're in conflict with our futures, because you're not employed by the student body, student union.
Yeah, there's maybe a perception bias
Okay,
there.
thank you.
And also,
What's that?
it's also 27, which is,
Yeah, I know that one, but the other, in the other day, she didn't recuse, like, she wasn't in conflict on one, but wasn't the other, so I just wanted to clarify that. So let's do our futures 2.0, grant to cover facility rental costs of the Checkerness Center needed to host academic conference, our futures 2.0. Councilor Bracken.
I think it's an interesting event. I don't know about $4,000 though, as far as sponsorship. I'd probably be more inclined to do like 1,000, given that it's the first year and hopefully they can leverage some additional funds. I just, it is a very specific thing. It's kind of academically focused, but bringing other people in, so there is a general benefit, but probably not 4,000 in my opinion.
Yeah, I was thinking sort of between 1 and 2-ish, but looking for other feedback.
I'm kind of there too.
I could go to max, so I agree with the Jason sentiments there. I think.
15, all right. Yeah, what's that?
Just should be noted that they will be selling tickets as well to the event.
that it's a paid event and that it's effectively a sponsorship, which under our policies are fairly gray for us. We generally don't sponsor events in cash. So
It's also a youth student event.
It is.
There's some wiggle room there, but.
it's your policy, obviously,
Yeah,
council, so.
yeah, no, I thank you for that. Councilor Race, did I see your hand?
No.
No. Councilor Pryor? Council want to consider 1,500?
I go with that.
Is this the one where they came and presented?
Young guy.
Or no?
Michelle.
Yeah.
This one's this one. I'll put that.
I think we should support it. What's their ask?
Their ask is 4,000.
Yeah,
We're suggesting 1,500 right now.
2,500.
I'll vote it.
1,500? Okay, and 1,500. The Quest University grant to cover costs for training, labor, and equipment for a new estuary monitoring program. So, I need to find that one better on here. Hard to read these spreadsheets on little laptop screens. Can you maybe speak to, just because now the text is too small for me to read once I zoom up. Speak to this one a bit, and we can ask them to come in.
So their main request
It's
is
a
going...
private institution, but it's a not-for-profit private institution.
It is not under the Universities Act, though, which generally, if we're allowed to provide support through taxation or anything, they have to be under the University Act, so let's put that distinction.
Voice of reason.
Sorry, say that again? We
So-
can do anything under grants.
You can do what you want under grants as aid, grants in aid, as long as you don't promote or support a business. I just am making the distinction for you that the Quest University does not actually fall under the Universities Act, which we would normally, for other types of support, like permissive tax exemptions, etc. We are actually not allowed to support them through those types of channels because they're not under that act. So
But that's separate.
a separate item, but
And they're not.
there is a distinction
a
made in other
for-profit
areas of the
business,
legislation.
or not-for-profit business, so we can, under the legislation, the community charter, we can technically.
It does have a foundation, so as far as I understand it, that's true. I don't know the rest of their corporate structure.
Okay. Do we want to ask them to come in and speak to us?
Well, concern I have with this is not whether we're able to, but whether we want to. It's kind of, is this a university research project? Is there some community benefit to this? Because these are, I think generally speaking, at the end of the day, we look for community benefit. and I'm not certain this meets it. So we could ask for a presentation or just at least clarification what it's for.
It very well could meet, I mean, they're doing estuary monitoring program. I mean, it sounds like there could be a great community benefit and value to the Watershed Society or others.
Well, let's get them into,
Okay.
that's the whole idea, is to engage those guys.
Okay.
Karen?
Yeah, please.
Do you want to pass a motion on the 1,500 while Karen's out? Or,
Which one?
1,500.
yeah, because there's no motion.
Move that we support our Futures 2.0 up to the tune of $1,500. Moved by Council Kent, seconded by Council Race. All those in favor, opposed, motion carries. Thank you. All right, we're gonna move back up to cutting barriers, employment and training. No, we
USBCA?
Sorry, thank you. VCSBCA funds to cover costs, of stay and neuter assistance programs for low-income residents. Moved, I'm supportive of this, helps us. We don't have overpopulation.
Yeah, agreed.
I think, yes, Karen.
And it's interesting because I think we funded this before, but not last year, so it is in fact a kind of a returning one.
Yeah, they did mention that those funds, they actually stretched it out until they just ran out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm totally supportive.
Okay. Next up, cutting barriers, employment and training. Wish I could easily reference page numbers on these. This is my inability on this.
Yeah, you can. Page numbers.
Yeah.
Nice. It's a great project, not only important.
You don't need to give it back.
Yeah,
I know,
Karen?
Tracy.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this one. This is one of the partners with the Under One Roof project they'll be training 48 people a year in culinary skills who have barriers to employment.
Yeah.
So I think this one makes a lot of sense and not only supports economic development and staff training, but also just really supports that partnership and bringing one thing.
Yeah, sorry, it jogged my memory. I think it's a great program. I'm happy to support it, but I'd love when someone actually talk to us about it more too, just from an informational point of view. So maybe we'll figure out, it doesn't have to be right away, but sometime in the new year, we'll have them come and just talk about it, but we're supporting the grant at this point. Don Ross Middle School, a grant to fund yoga wellness class for students, an instructor cost of $63 a week. It says there's incomplete application, amount not specified, verbal confirmation received is the per week amount. Yes.
Yeah, so I was a bit confused by this because it asks for a total amount, but then the email and the application from the instructor says it's like so much per hour, I think. And it was
Yeah,
for like one class.
1 hour a week, one class,
Class.
yeah, one class a
So
week.
that was a bit confusing. I also, feel this would be a school board application for funding, not so much ours. Which isn't to say that the school board couldn't work with our recreation services to figure out how we would do outreach programs. That would be the way to do it, but this doesn't feel right to me. This feels like this is what the school district should be building into their budgets. I love the idea, just not with the funding.
And I just think of the 10 schools in town coming back with similar type requests.
I'll play a little bit devil's advocate.
Do it.
I mean,
I'm open to it.
I mean, what is interesting about it is that it's for a middle school, and you have all of the kids filtering from Squamish filtering through that middle school, and that also is sort of a key age when kids are starting to develop their habits that they will take on with them over their life. So I mean, that's what piqued my curiosity, and it did seem like something that, I mean, ideally it'd be great if the school board would fund that, but they are so restricted in terms of their funding envelope, like they barely have money to fund, the ability to fund things like music classes and things of that nature. So it is a little bit, I don't know, I mean, I think if it was a smaller amount, I might be more comfortable thinking about that, but, you know.
I'd rather if we're gonna put money into John Ross Middle School, do something more on a bullying program or something. I know yoga's wellness, could be basketball, I don't think it really matters. I kind of feel that this is a prime candidate for someone in the community who may support this kind of thing, a business or an organization, or I just feel like it opens up a kind of a can of worms with us. And I don't mean that in a bad sense, it just, yeah.
That's 52 weeks yoga classes, and school doesn't run that. I just don't understand the grant ask for if it's $63 per class. That's 52 weeks of yoga class. So that really doesn't, is it twice a week? Like, I'm not sure if that makes any sense. And maybe if there's an afternoon yoga class, it should be something that is PAC funded and PAC fundraised for, not related to rural taxation.
Yeah, okay, I'm not hearing any support for that one. Environmental Conservation Society, we had a pretty good presentation this morning that rationalizes this funding. Everyone's okay with that one? I think they do a great job. Evans Lake Forest Education Society, grant to create an educational trail for both locals and tourists in order to highlight the critical importance of forests. I don't know, did you see where? Is it out in front of us?
It's a public trail.
Any thoughts, council? I was thinking, why does the forestry company support this?
Exactly, and I think you can take a walk anywhere in Squamish and see the critical importance of forests.
There are many interpreters.
Not many.
Jason?
So one thing I want to ask staff about this is because this project sounds very familiar. I think it came to us before and we did reject it, but I guess maybe it was it 2 years ago that they applied?
I'm sorry, my memory's not
Yeah,
that good.
Because I know
They have
showing here it says NA, but what I'm thinking, if my memory is correct, I think that their initial ask was much, much higher. I think they were trying to get like 10 or 15,000, and so seeing it revised with a smaller number makes me think that I'm more willing to consider it, given the fact that in Paradise Valley, which is indeed part of the district, we don't have very many, public spaces as far as, formalized public spaces, I guess I would say. That way. So, there's lots of interesting things, but this might be a good addition, and might be a good thing to create a destination.
Karen?
I think I'm a maybe on this, and I'd kind of like to see where the chips land. Like maybe not the full amount, maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit, I'm just not sure. I might need to go back and read the application again. They have applied to someone else for $5,000, but they haven't heard
What
back.
page of the agenda? I'm so lost in the
341 is their budget, and the pages are prior to that.
Yeah. That's right. Peter, is that a him?
No.
That's good to know. Let's park this one. We're not getting anywhere on it. And we'll come back to the park one. Farmers Market Association. It sounds like a really good program. Any thoughts? Okay.
I'm curious to note here that it's a possible profit enterprise. I thought farmer's market was nonprofit, but I'm wrong. I think maybe I just made that assumption.
Well, that was actually referring to the idea that they're promoting other, well, depends. The chef at the market is going to be using produce in the actual farmer's market to try and sell products that are being sold there. So if that's a good economic development initiative, or if it's just profit initiative, can be determined.
I think the objective is to educate people on food, and the byproduct is some businesses might be selling garlic to an extra garlic recipe. So thanks for bringing it to attention, but I think as a nonprofit society, I mean, this is going to the farmers market for food security and awareness issues. Any objections to this one? We'll start from that. Okay, this one looks good. Then that one's paddling club. This is for a new canoe. It's membership only.
Well, it's membership only question mark, and I'm not sure if it would be, and I say that because the yacht club got a grant for boats from the legacy fund, but it's a community sailing program, so anybody can go and be part of that program.
It's a lot of money too.
Yeah, I mean, apart from that, I'm not just, there's other issues, I guess, but membership only, I think maybe it's not.
Do people want to hear more about that?
I can't remember us buying equipment like this in previous years, but prior councils do buy stuff for boats.
We bought sailboats for a program that's open to anybody.
That was the legacy fund.
Then that was not grants and aid, and I know we supported the purchase of some docks at the yacht club years ago. Or at
Before my time.
Yeah, Robin, I'm looking to you.
I'm trying to remember anything that was outside the legacy funding. There probably has been, but it's not been for a very, very long time. Because I think we've moved away from sponsoring that kind of thing to more socially oriented.
More program oriented,
Yeah.
less capital budget oriented.
Yeah, I guess my concern is, when I look at these grants generally, and I know we have a policy around it, I think of things that are charitable or sort of charitable or youth related as kind of being the priorities, and I just don't see that. It's a sporting club, and so I have almost the same objections to the curling club, and I always get heck from the executive of the curling club every year for voting against their grant applications, but it's kind of the same thing. It's a private club, private thing. It's not a special program or a special thing like the legacy fund was. So I just wonder if it's appropriate for a grant maybe. As much as I love the paddling club and so forth, but just wonder
I
if it's
feel like
appropriate.
it's a bit of a slippery slope, this one. Unless I see a motion to support it, I'm just going to assume we're not supporting it. Okay. Safe and sound,
Oh yeah, I'm going to declare a conflict in this, like, has been supported by the organization.
Any objections to this? Okay. Who's gonna get Jason?
Jason.
Put your fingers in your ears.
Kelsey, can you please Jason?
Sorry, no time for a smoke.
Great, bye.
Okay, we'll recess this. Yeah. We'll just do these last two, and then we're gonna recess this, and Dora has to leave at 4:30, so we'll just have a quick thing. I think we should park the Sea to Sky Forestry Center Society. I'm not sure we can consider something like that. So we should have a conversation with him about it, though, but.
Would you like them to come in as a delegation or?
Karen?
So I think there's a conversation to be had, but it's more of a strategic one.
Yeah.
And So
I think of it more like Sea to Sky Community Services, where we waived some fees, we waived DCCs, like we facilitated the project through our means, but not actually through tax revenue cash. And I think that's the conversation we have with the society. Doug?
Yeah, and I was going back to the very earliest stages of that, and I was on the board for a while. It was intended to be funded by industry.
That was always
And what they looked to the district for, which we gave them, is the land, albeit by lease, but still, that was supposed to be the district's contribution. So this is, when you start building the building, that's a different arena from my perspective.
And that was certainly always portrayed to us as this was an industry-funded facility. So, I think we'll continue that conversation with them, but at this point, we're not funding the request. Is that where I'm hearing Council? Okay. And I think Vancouver International Sculpture Biennale, this is for bike racks. I think these types of things should go through the Public Art Committee to begin with, and then come back to council should there be any. Totally up to council, but Councilor Elliott.
I wrote that in my notes about anything to do with Biennale should really go through the Public Arts Committee first, I think. And if there are going to be more art projects, then perhaps we can consider this. But where, the Wolf is primarily grown over and there's nothing to view it by. The suitcases are up at Coast Mountain. Not many people are going to bike up there to park their bike in a pink bike rack up there. The logs have been scattered to the four winds, but the most accessible one is in the Valley Cliff Park, I think. Oh, the one right by the Adventure Center, so you can walk there.
Yeah.
So I just don't see the need for this right now.
Yeah, and I think we referred to Public Art. If they want to go to Public Art Committee, they can, but at this point, council's not considering it. But maybe just put it to them. You can present to the Public Art Committee. I think they're coming next week anyway on other stuff. So if they want to talk about that, then they can. Okay, so we're just going to recess this particular topic. Council wanted to, thanks to Dover Park. Council just wanted to revisit the transit conversation from this morning. Maybe I'll ask Dora and Chris to join us. There was a little bit of new information that came at the end of the meeting with regard to some routing that seems to be overprescribed and kids not making it on buses. And I think council would like to have a little bit of a conversation about that. So, because it could impact our decision whether or not we think the supplemental park route is where we should prioritize our next little bit, and instead should we actually make sure kids are getting to school. So maybe if you can help outline the scope of the problem. Laura, and see what I do.
Sure. So all the information I've received has mostly just been anecdotal. So I understand that Valley Cliff is a bit of a problem and Brackendale is a bit of a problem, but those are the only two that I've heard of. So, but we were always planning to go and get some more information from the drivers. And then next time we have the opportunity to change the routing a bit to address that, we will. We're a little bit constrained right now due to the fact that we only have 7 buses and there's 4 routes. So the opportunity to double up is somewhat limited. 2 of the buses are in reserve. So 5 out there at any given time, and there's 4 routes. So we wouldn't want to take away service from one route on a peak time to double up on another one. So we are currently a bit constrained. I did check in with BC Transit, and they said the next best opportunity to look at this is for the September 2018 expansions that we will be coming back to council to discuss anyways. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. We are trying to schedule a meeting with the school district, so I don't know why all of a sudden, I know Valley Cliff has never had bus service there or limited. Not sure what, is the school district not doing proper school buses or what's going on?
I think from what I've heard, it started with the 12 and under ride free. So it's the success of the program. I hadn't heard any issues prior to that. It's only been since September that I've heard about it. And then there is, so Valley Cliff is a bit of a special case because the students that are going from there to Squamish Elementary, they're close enough that they don't fall into the school board's mandate for having a school bus go there. But for the parents, they have to cross the highway, and so it's a great option for those parents. So that's a bit of a special case, that one.
What if we just eliminated the Tantalus route?
Yeah, well, that was my thought too.
I know, well, I mean, we talked about how it's the least used route, and that most of the people who are actually riding that bus are getting on at other stops that are not on Tantalus, so, I mean.
They're just riding it
I know that's gonna make BC Transit's head explode, but I mean.
Or is this gonna make BC Transit's head explode?
No. I think maybe at this point, the best scenario could be, we are aware of it. So when we come back to council with the discussion for the September 2018, which is where we're looking at changing Tantalus.
No, the question
anyways.
is Tantalus.
No, but this is related to Tantalus, sorry. When we come back to discuss that, which will be this spring, to discuss those changes for fall of 2018, we will be talking about Tantalus.
I think we want to consider changing it before fall of 2018. Reallocating what is today a route. I think that's where.
Yeah, or building on, I think what the mayor was alluding to at the conversation earlier is like, now that we have that turnout at Dowd, could we get the floor, for example, like, I mean, we'd have to know where the kids are coming from, but I'm assuming there's a significant number of kids from the estates. Are they mandated for school buses still in middle school? Anybody know?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Tons of school buses, especially because everyone's going to one school, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, they would get the bus.
So it confuses me as to why Brackendale would be congested.
Is it because of I think it's because of the middle school.
I don't know if it's more the elementary or more the middle school.
12 and under.
All I know is it's that 12 and under ride free, maybe just opened up some new options for people.
Good, putting us over the map. Okay.
I suppose this is a good problem to have, because we made transit free for 12 and unders on purpose. We really want that next generation of transit users to get used to riding it from a very young age. It's a long time till 2018, in fact, a whole winter. And I think our complaints will go up the more that kids are left in the rain and snow or what have you over this winter. So is there an opportunity to do schedule changes, tweak them sooner rather than later to try and accommodate this before we
Eliminate buses. Look into it. I think I will discuss it with BC Transit and see what is possible. It's difficult for me to answer without them.
Can I just follow up and say, so this is really late breaking news for us as well. We're still trying to figure out where the biggest problems are. Obviously it's a peak only problem, and we only have so many buses. I think the Tantalus idea is actually a really good one. So we're still in the let's talk to the bus drivers about where this is happening stage. We haven't actually heard back from any. I don't want to presuppose what we can do, but I think as long as we stay within the number of buses and the number of hours we have allocated and all that sort of thing, we do have some ability to move things around. So we'll work with BC Transit to see what the best option is. And we're scheduled to be back to talk to council about the next expansion, but we may need to be back. If we're going to do something drastic like cancel a route, we'll come back before then to
And I think what we're looking for is a little bit of latitude. I know BC Transit like to plot, but a little bit of nimbleness to be able to massage as we go along and meet some of these needs and react to some deficiencies within our budget ability, within our program ability. But Karen.
I just, if I had known that we were driving past kids, I wouldn't have been so keen on piloting the parks one. I would have wanted to allocate those hours. So as the conversation comes forward, I just want us to be really mindful of that, is that our citizens come first, and I don't want anyone being driven by. And if that means foregoing a pilot project so that we can increase service on the core network sooner rather than later, that's important to me.
I think that's a priority of all of council.
So that really shifted my thinking, learning that piece of information.
Our constraint in this case is not actually service hours, it would worry because it is, but it's also predominantly buses. And the South Park service doesn't come with another bus, so there's not really a trade-off there. However, we definitely can look at it though and see what we can do.
Ted?
Well, I'd like to wait and hear what the bus drivers have to say, because if it's only the one route going to school and the one route coming home from school, we don't need to cancel a whole bus route to look after that.
No, I don't. No one's, I think.
I definitely would like to look at contracting, as I've said many times, like contracting our routes and servicing the core to where people can walk, like if they choose to live at the end of a road, that is on an active transportation route. That has a trail going all the way to Brennan Park, like basically in a separated bike lane. So it's the safest area to get around on your bike. So it's not like we're forcing people into the road or anything. They have other options. Yeah, to get onto.
That you have the benefits.
No.
That's a terrible time.
That's a terrible time. But the whole service of decentralizing, like as our economy grows and we're densifying this middle area, we really need it may need like an entire revamp of looking at, and not just business as usual, but looking at like multiple buses going around one route, and that people maybe have to walk a few blocks to get to the central route, but they are offered 10 to 15 minute transportation instead of 1 to 2 hour transportation, and not, if they miss a bus, then they wait 10 minutes and not another hour, which is the problem, because the kids, if they miss the bus, don't have another option.
So if we could do some proactive analysis and research on the extent of the problem, how many kids are being left behind, is it 5 kids, is it 10 kids, is it 20 kids? And if there's any way to figure out how we can get those kids to school through massaging of our existing system, that we look into that and we bring it back and we get that. Yeah.
Well, it's brief, and I agree. I mean, I was delighted to hear this morning we actually had a full bus for anything. So it's the first time I've heard that. So I don't want to lose that. And I think the kids are the first priority. And I think it's eminently defensible to sacrifice some of the Tantalus service, partly because the real development that's going to drive that service just hasn't quite got out of the ground yet. It's been zoned and there's more potential up there. And I'm thinking that this is a 6-month program. In other words, in the sense that January 1st to June 30th, because we can look at a longer term starting September 18, we can consider that in the spring, but I would want to see this start January 1st if there's a need for it. And we just take it away from Tantalus. We can put Tantalus back next fall if there was justification for it.
And maybe just make sure any conversation about the spring 2018, fall 2018 augmentation, that we're taking all of this into consideration.
Yes.
But I think you're hearing from council, if this is a problem, we want it potentially solved if we can, without having to wait a year for BC Transit to get a new bus or whatever. So if there's a solution out there we're looking for.
All right.
Exploding heads.
Appreciate you coming back. Thank you very much. Okay, where are we? I have to apologize. When we did the agenda, it was like 3 minutes before another nighttime meeting between the SYB meeting, and we didn't dig into the time of these, because these are all meaty issues, and we've gone over on every one of them, and I take responsibility, but we need to be more mindful of the time allocations as we do the agenda. Okay. Where are we?
I think we're almost to the point of cycling back to some of the ones that we kind of said we'd like to come back to. So,
Can you, what's that?
Do you have a total yet? Like a,
yeah, so right now, if I've entered this correctly, you're at 91,535, but right now you do not yet have Sorka in, you don't have Big Brothers in, you don't have some big players in, so just encourage you to go back and maybe start to revisit some of those.
Can you go through the list of the ones we've asked to come back?
Sure. So I have a delegation for BIA. I have one for the Arts Council. I have one
On
for...
the second half of their request.
Yeah, they asked
On the
us to
partnership piece.
agree, but it
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for the partnership piece, right. So let me just make sure I've got that in there then. The Craft Beverage Association. You would love us to invite the cutting barriers back, but that can happen in the new year. That's what I heard.
Yeah, just for more information, we supported it, but, yeah.
Quest University.
For the estuary monitoring
Correct.
one, yeah.
And I think that's it.
And we hadn't, I don't want to get into too much detail, we hadn't made a determination on a couple of them too. We kind of just parked them.
We'd park them temporarily, so we'd certainly like to circle back. Big Brothers
And
is
they're
parked.
Mount Point. From Access Society parked. Soul's parked.
Remind me why we parked Big Brothers again?
Their amount is higher than last year. I believe was the, actually no, it's not, right? Same amount.
It was just $1,400 more.
Actually, it looks like the same amount on the schedule I'm looking at.
The amount requested.
Oh, sorry, the amount approved was 10 and the amount requested last year was 11,400.
So
you
you're
only
asking
gave
for
10.
11,400 this year?
So there's 1,400 more than last year.
Oh, yeah, we approved.
I'd go with 10.
Just stick to the same amount? Any objection to that? No, okay, we've unparked that one.
Okay.
10,000. What else did we park?
The Memprem Access Society.
Yeah, I was CC'd on some correspondence this week on their conversations with the DCH. So, and I just want to understand, it's an awful lot of money, Karen.
so the thing I'm thinking about as we're entering budget is that last year there was asked for our own campground, which we didn't really fund. And we've, through our contingency, kept funding this campground, which there's a need for it, there's no doubt about it. It's just that that's a lot of money. And we know we need to make upgrades to our own campground. So I'm in conflict on this a little bit.
Not in conflict, but you're
But,
conflicted.
not in conflict, I'm conflicted about where we're spending this money.
Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
And the other issue here is, I'm not even sure that this will solve or resolve the issue to the satisfaction of BCH. And this is the tipping point. If it doesn't, we lay out $22,000 and they're not happy and they still don't allow the permit to open the campsite, we've wasted $22,000.
And I don't know if it's, I was CC'd, so I don't know if it's information for me to divulge. But there may be some time latitude on coming to a conclusion on this that I wouldn't mind clarifying first. There's my little vague thing. So we're gonna just keep this part. Ted?
Just wondered if engineering have talked to these guys. You know, and it seems like there's a bit of a spitting match going on, and I don't know if our engineering department can find a solution.
I think our engineering department is full out on relative, they've got engineers working on this for them, so I really don't think I want our staff to be.
Maybe just a matter of trying to get VCH to a point that they'll approve something.
Which they might do for the district.
Or they might
won't.
approve a temporary solution that allows time for some fundraising to happen. So we're gonna keep that one part.
So how would you like us to bring this back to you at some point? Are we we'd just wait for your cue.
Maybe we just bring it back before we finalize the budget, just so we make sure. I just wouldn't mind to allow them more time to have these conversations with BCH, and it may require them to come back with some specific information.
Great, thank you. Sorka?
Sorry, Doug.
Oh, I was just gonna mention, what about Sorka? I thought you were finishing up with the whole thing.
Oh, I am. No, I'm just going on to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorka? Doug?
Well, just to deal with it, I thought you were just signing off on everything, so,
No, I wasn't. I was going through the park ones one by one.
we provided, was it 75,000 last year?
Yes, I believe so, just for some reason.
Including the
Yeah,
grant?
it was, they asked for 75 and they got 75 last year.
Yeah. I am inclined to stay at that number, just because we've got a lot of other things that are.
Are they not coming to present as a partner? Don't we have all of our partners present?
They're not really a partner.
We
have them present every year though.
We can.
In that sort of.
So last year we didn't bring everybody back.
No, we got Peterson, Squamish, Sorka, and SAR. They were part of the three sort of the bigger community partner types that present every year. So I think they should come back and present their value for money proposition.
So I'm just being reminded that they are coming as a delegate. They had requested a delegation, so perhaps we can put them on December 18th with the others.
Defer it. If that's all right with council, defer it to that.
Unfortunately, sorry, I called him this morning. He can't come on December 18th. He's going to be going away.
So he's coming in January sometime.
Yeah, either before December 16th or after January, but these have to be decided.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I just remembered I signed a delegation thing. That's why I knew they were coming.
So we have the Arts Council coming on the 12th, as I understand it, so perhaps if you want to come on the 12th.
Sure. That would be great. Okay. So that one's still parked until then. What else did we park?
Let's just have a quick look down here. Other than the delegations of BIA, the Aligned Collective.
Yeah, let's just go through the other ones and then Councillor Schwab and recuse. So Evans Lake.
Evans Lake Forestry.
Council? I think I'd like to know more information on it, to be honest. Maybe we'll ask them to come in.
Okay.
I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. My instinct is no, but I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Is that the group that has a thing at the top of the hill there in Evans?
They have a camp,
Yeah, it's
a
a camp.
forestry summer camp
Yeah, so
that
they're a for-profit.
mostly runs through the summer. It's I don't know if it's a not-for-profit, it's a camp, it's a summer camp.
I'll get out there.
They just have a forestry focus.
Is this a for-profit or not?
I always assumed it was for-profit, like it's a private camp, but it may be a private camp funded through, I know that industry has something to do with the camp in terms of curriculum and supports and that type of thing, like the forest industry.
Register with the chair.
Is it?
Yeah. My recollection, because they actually made a presentation in Rotary a few years ago, was that it was kind of a not-for-profit, but it's significantly funded by the forest industry. That's one of the major sources of funding, I think. So my view of this one is that, yeah, there is a community benefit to it. It is a youth camp, there's tourism, there's economic development, and Jason's right, up in that area, there's really few district facilities. So I'd be inclined to put in something, maybe not $3,500, but maybe $2,000, something like that.
And do we get, if we want it, our logo on their interpretive sign, for example?
Probably, but I don't know.
Are you suggesting an amount, Councilor Wade?
Yeah, 2,000.
2,000 is their general support for 2,000? I'd like to see some more detail on it, but, yeah. Okay?
So we're not asking for them to be a delegate, we're giving them 2,000, is that
We're
correct?
giving them 2,000. I would like more, I don't know if I care if they come as delegation, but I would like more information. And I think there should be some acknowledgement in the interpretive program to the district of Squamish contributing.
We had, so the Vancouver Biennale, my understanding is that it's just off the table for this, but they should go back and approach the Public Arts Committee, is that?
Yeah, if they want. They're coming anyway next week, so.
How are we doing? Do we have everything? I'm scrambling down here to make sure we've got everything.
Don't say that.
Yes, we had to cycle back to the Aligned Collective.
Yeah.
Subject to persuasion.
We had sort of said, if I remember, we're interested in some more information, but feeling a little uncomfortable funding capital projects for a brand new entity. Councilor Lee.
You know, if this was for a program, or it was enhancing services to not-for-profits, or it was for a conference that was going to pull all our rec tech people together and they needed just some, but it's for capital, it's like buying a boat for the paddling club. It just doesn't feel right for me. Because the benefit to the whole community is not clear, and their business model is not clear. So I feel like their rent should buy them equipment. You work that into your capital costs of developing your business plan. And so it's, you know, I like the idea of this. The ask is not the right thing. It makes it supportable.
My understanding here, there's a similar type entrepreneurial hub elsewhere in the community starting out.
The Common is open on Cleveland. It's not a not-for-profit. Aligned Collective was set up as a not-for-profit.
Okay.
But the business model is
the same.
It's the same. They've just structured their business differently. So anyway, it feels like buying the boat for the paddle club. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what I'm generally hearing. What was articulated earlier. I think unless someone wants to articulate a different perspective, we'll say no to funding at this point. But I think with all of these, not just this one, we need to, you know, articulate.
Well, why don't we get these guys to come in and talk to us? I mean, I've never met them.
Well, they were here just a couple weeks ago.
Really?
They were.
They asked
Like
for a letter of
literally-
support.
Yeah, they asked for a letter of support just 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago?
It might have been in Ontario.
Oh, it might have been when you were away.
No. Okay, there you go.
Okay, so that's a no. All right, did we, okay. Did we get some? Okay.
Is that it, except for the ones that are coming back?
So I believe that we
We have to wait for Councilor Schultz.
Let's see, we've got everything except those that we're bringing back. So, is that what you're going to show too?
Are we through everything, Christine?
We believe we are, other than those that you'd like to bring back.
Okay.
And that the Aligned Collective was, right?
Sorry. Did we sort out the DBA? Downtown business?
They're
coming back?
coming
They're coming back.
in as a delegation, and my understanding is they're just to talk to the in-kind portion, is that?
I think we wanted to know why there's basically a $5,000 increase for the exact same program as last year.
Okay.
But that's both of them.
That's both of them.
But you want to hold both of them?
The
Okay.
in-kind and the cash.
Great.
They usually come in anyway to talk to the flow-through money and just their general state of the union type address. So that's usually sometime in February, March anyway, is it not, Kristen?
Yes, they are required under the IA to come back in the new year.
Okay.
However, you're asking them come sooner, correct? Because we want to make a decision
Well,
on this.
we want them, on this, but we might as well cover it all at once, is my thought, but on this, they'll need to come back so we can make a budget decision.
Great, okay.
And what we could do, here's the thought, we could say yes to whatever happened last year, and if they want to tap into additional funds, they can come. If they just go, oh yeah, we'll make do, then we could deal with it in that way. So why don't we say, is council okay with the same funding as last year? And maybe leave it up to them. If they want to come articulate why they need more, then they can do that. Otherwise, it's the same funding as last year. Does that sound good? Ted?
I'm just, we had the class students in here, and we had the one guy
Hold on.
coming in. Oh, sorry, man.
Your comment on that.
Yeah. And,
Okay, go.
well, the one young fellow that was left talking to us about funding for bringing in speakers, and it was really quite community. Is that this one that's here?
Our Futures 2.0? Yes,
And so we're funding that to the tune of how much?
1,500.
Well, I would like us to revisit that and give those guys a little bit more, because that was, it's for the community, it's not just for them, and they came in the auspice of community building and engaging the district and engaging the community, and I was, we've been wanting that forever. And so finally we get a guy to come in and we give them a third of what they want, and then a bunch of guys come in and want money for beer, and we go, let's go with the beer.
We have not given the beer any money,
I'm just
Councillor
being
Pryor.
sarcastic.
No, you're being infactual.
Yeah, but anyway, so I want to, I'd like us to do a little better job for the university guys, because, we say, please, come down, and we want to talk to you, come on, please, and then they come down, and then we go,
I wouldn't articulate it that way. I know that's your perspective. I actually wouldn't mind supporting this a little bit more. I want to empower these students, and it is a big picture, and there is one of the 2.5 days is focused on sort of a big picture think on Squamish and Buxton.
But I think a lot of that money goes to paying for the...
I had the floor, Councillor Pryor. I'll give it back to you in a minute. So I would support up to 2,500 if council is amenable to that. Councillor Pryor, do you want to speak more?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, he was talking about all the speakers that he was bringing in to present.
There's a value added there,
Yeah,
for sure.
and so, anyway, 2,500 at a minimum, I would be happy with 3,500.
Councillor Buxton.
I like the 1,500 to start. I just sort of think about how, it is just a one-off event, like a 3-day event. Well, this is the funding for 1 year. And I think about how for, experienced local organizations like Squamish Can, we're giving them 3,000. So to me, 1,500 is reasonable. And then, if it's a very, very successful next year, then they'll probably be able to raise more money in kind, and we might consider a public contribution. That said, I'm not opposed to raising it to 2,000. That's my effort today.
Thanks.
But to support that, they did this event last year, unsupported by us, and managed to pull it off on a smaller scale. So all we're doing is augmenting what they did last year with the $1,500. Or 25.
Any other thoughts? We've got a proposal for 25 and we've got a proposal for 2.
I'll second 25.
Okay, that's been moved, but we have 2 proposals up there. I was looking for more of a consensus-driven. We got 2 2,000s, we got 2 2,500s.
See everybody staring at me.
Both of you.
All of us.
I can feel the bus wheels going across my back.
I think they will be happy for anything. I wouldn't deliberate too hard on it.
Yeah, I'd go 2.
Done?
Yeah, it was a 2.
Okay, $2,000 it is.
Now, on that topic, Mayor Heinzman, this event is in February, so we would have to early release that funding ahead of that event. Is that comfortable with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I move that we support our Futures 2.0 to the tune of $2,000 and that funds be released in January 2018. Moved and seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Any motion carries. All right, okay, Councillor Elliott.
So we have.
Okay, good job. So we have a couple coming back. We have our sort of bigger community partners coming in variously. Anything else, Christine? How are we doing?
I think we're doing pretty good, other than you didn't circle about on the community foundation conversation.
Oh, yeah. I really love this small grant program that they're doing. I think it's really cool. We've talked about how do we engage neighborhoods on a basis. I can't remember how much money they're putting towards this. Was it like they get some grant money, but I was wondering if council would consider setting up almost like a X amount of money that would be matching funds up to a certain amount of money to support these small initiatives. Amped in the Park got one of their small community things last year. There was a neighborhood little block party. Like I think this is a really cool thing. So I wouldn't mind us considering, you know, up to $5,000, or it all comes in and they get these in, and if we can leverage it to say they have $15,000 to do these instead of $8,000 or whatever, then I think it's kind of cool.
I agree, and the thing I like about it is you've got a good, strong group looking after the terminals.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of helping them out.
Can you remind me, Christine, do you know what do they have a funding amount for that?
I'm sorry, I cannot speak to that, unfortunately.
I think
Do
it
you
was
recall,
around
Robin?
I don't
So-
recall the number.
Certainly, we were able to leverage quite well off them last year with the 10,000 that we.
That was a separate, that was through the Canada 150 grant amount.
Right,
This
okay.
is through a different program, through the Vancouver Foundation, I believe. Why don't we say that we will match fund up to $5,000? I'm putting that out there as a discussion point, Councillor Race.
Yeah, the part that I think I recall is that whatever they're able to put together, the Vancouver Foundation matches.
Yeah.
So if they put 5,000 down, we put 5,000 down, they can then get 10,000 from the
10,000.
Vancouver
Oh,
Foundation.
okay.
I think that's the way it works.
That sounds really good.
Okay.
Can they come back on the 12th and just speak to it a little bit to make sure that that's indeed the right fund?
Yeah, let's do that, because the way I initially had the conversation with them was how do we use it to inspire people to go out and do these things in their neighborhoods and bring that sort of connectivity and neighborhoodliness to neighborhoods. So we can ask Doug or their EA, executive director, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Anyway, to come and maybe speak to that program, and we can then determine the amount better. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
I believe we're through everything we needed to talk to you about.
Awesome. Does that mean we're done with that committee of the whole agenda?
The motion comments?
Okay, motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Kent. All those in favor, opposed, motion carries